Listen, babe. Oh, yeah. It's alright, alright, alright. 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 Listen, babe. Oh, yeah. It's alright, alright, alright.
Hey, welcome.
Yo,
Thank
what's
you.
happening?
You got to give me a better cue than that. That was Silence of the Lamb cue. Sorry about that, y'all. Well, welcome back for another class. We have a quiet team working with us today who are very peaceful, and they're probably with meditation, so we were watching them meditate, so we missed our cue. So anyway, I'm Nana Kofinti, as you guys should know at this point because you're members.
Court Smith.
So we have a really rich class coming, planned for you this evening, and a lot to cover. And so before we get started, those of you who are using the portal for the first time, if you just arrived at the portal and you're watching the video, if you wish to chat, there's a yellow bar that says watch on YouTube. If you watch on YouTube, you will be able to chat. So let me say this once again. You will have the option to chat. If you wish to chat, and if you like, say if you're watching at home, if you want to chat, click on the yellow bar that says watch on YouTube, and that will allow you to chat. Also, there's a comment section that is right beneath the video if you want to leave comments. We will be using that section of the video in the near future for exercises so folks can write their thoughts and ideas, and we can view those ideas in real time and engage in exercises. Although I will argue that ultimately, if you want to engage in exercises in this class is preparation, but the only way you really learn is by going out and testing these ideas. So if you don't test these ideas, it's like going to the gym and having a good workout and then not going back for another year. It meant nothing. And so you have to test these ideas to see the value of these ideas. And so just be aware that we will have exercises in class so we can kind of work on clarity, but all the stuff that we do in class is really preparation for the lesson, and the lesson is actually engagement. And so you have to engage. Excuse me. So that's first thing. Second thing, I want to get this out the way because this is something one of our family members of Hope, somebody who's been riding with us for about 3 years. Aoife Funky, as you guys all know her, she's a sister who sells the real dope African clothing, really rich material. She's always doing great dance videos. She's just recently got married. She brought her husband in. The brother was just as beautiful as she was, as far as spirit and how they both showed up. And as you know, they had their first baby, and then she recently had twins. Well, she lost one of her twins. Took him to the hospital for just a regular checkup, and the child caught a fever, and one of the children didn't make it. So on our page in the Hope, within the Hope portal, we have a section where you can click on, and let's all come together. Those of you who know Aoife Funky, let's all continue to donate, support her. She's a hard-working entrepreneur, a real entrepreneur.
Yeah.
She's a serious dope-ass Pan-African entrepreneur. She's from West Africa, but she doesn't make that separation and distinction. She's our sister, and in every possible way. And I know personally about her. If that happened to any of us, I've seen her run to support us. So those of you who can, whatever you can give. For those of you who can't give, because just hey, this is COVID. We get it. Shakira will be reaching out to people to kind of give them an idea of how they can participate. They can participate in the process of supporting her in labor. And so in that support of labor, folks can come through, go to their house and cook, or I mean, it's not cook, but clean, and because she still has 2 children, and honestly, she's not there. That's a lot for a person to experience. So to make a long story short, let's just make sure we're supportive. Next. Make sure you hit the sharp button before when you change the focus point. Make sure you hit the sharp button. Next, I want to personally thank the donors, the people who've been donating to the class. Neelan, who's also a student in this class, who's been with us since the first year, and Neelan is really moving and shaking. He's a contractor. And he's organizing black contractors all over the Bay Area to make sure they have opportunities that I think they said something like 300. I think it was something like $300 million went out to contractors, and black people only got like something like 1 million amongst all the black contractors. And so he's been organized to make sure that that never happens again. And he's also educating other black contractors. And when he first came to class, he was just doing floors. And so he got with us, and he got with the Turner Brothers. And Turner Brothers, somebody shout out to the Turner Brothers. We love them brothers.
Yeah.
But he got with the Turner Brothers, and they helped that brother grow. So recently, he went at the beginning of the year. He donated $250, and then he went to help somebody out. And they say, "Hey, what can we give you?" He's like, "Yo, just give the money to Hope." And he brought one night. He knocks on my door and with a check for $250 to donate to Hope. Right. I also want to talk about Shakina. Y'all seen her on the microphone a lot of times, with a little hippity hopping, jumping up there, trying to reach the microphone with a lot of great ideas. She donated about $300. Mateen Kimmett is a brother I know from New York. He donated some money. And then I want to talk about Brendan Anderson. Although he didn't donate, he has donated. He's brought in people from the Oakland School District, and he signed up for year memberships for numerous people. He literally went to school district and collaborated with a lot of people in his industry and got a lot of people to sign up full membership. So I want to say a lot of thank you to Brendan. And then last, this one floored me because I wasn't ready to see this. So Mashama sends me a text in the morning, and he says, "I think I'll let this train. Did they just improve the horn?"
It sound like it.
Yeah. So he says to me, "Hey, Nana, I think there's too many zeros in this donation." So I said, "What?" I'm just waking up. I'm like, "What are you talking about, right?" And Fire Team Media, we have some amazing photographers. Cola is a dope ass commercial photographer. Irk is a dope ass creative photographer. Dre is a dope ass street photographer, probably the dopest I've ever seen in my life. To this day, I've never seen anybody that shoot better street photography than Dre, hands down. And then Scott is kind of like a photojournalist, right? So all of these, we got some amazing photographers, but this is a photographer that comes to class that we all admire. And his skills is impeccable. I mean, if you look at his work, if he ever tells a story, it feels like he's bragging because he's very humble, but he's just a natural. He's a natural. He can see things that average person can't see, and his potentials are beyond our imagination. And so his name is Darren Ballridge. Mm-hmm. Darren donated $4,500. Yeah, you heard me. Sit down, just breathe. $4,500 to Hope.
Wow. Wow.
I called him up and I said, "Man, I don't even have the proper words to say thank you."
Wow.
A brother in the black community who's performing, who's out here grinding like the rest of us, who's running his own business, who's, by the way, does amazing work, donated $4,500. And he said, "Yo, I'm not gonna get his details, but he pretty much just says, hey, thank you for what the class has done. He said, I wanted to say thank you to the class." And
Wow.
I don't even have the words for that. So I want to say from Neelan to Shakina to Mateen to Darren to Brendan, hey, to all y'all, thank you, love you guys,
Wow.
appreciate the love.
Thank you.
Just taking that extra step. I mean, y'all know when black folks donate, we gotta stop and just acknowledge that and nod our heads to it. We should never, because black folks, we don't give unless we believe.
True story.
But we'll sit in church all day long and give $2. We don't believe ain't nothing come out these pockets. And so for these black folks to pull out hundreds and thousands of dollars,
Wow.
it just says a lot, man. It says a lot. So, but like I said, once again, I don't want us to lose track. Let's keep, like right now my heart is with Eva Funke. And I know I keep coming back, but let's, like those of you at home, click on that button. Let's support her. Like if you don't know her, and I understand, like I say, I understand you don't personalize everybody's story, but that's somebody, that's a loved one. And, when it hit me, I think I found out about it Friday night, I was frozen. I couldn't even move. It took me a whole day just to start to function because, man, it hurts, man. It hurts. She's a beautiful person.
Yeah, absolutely.
Also, I want to say this week, Tone and Charlize, they killed it.
Good job.
They did a Q&A this week. It was on Friday. Tone was in my seat on fire. I'm surprised I'm glad he didn't burn a hole in it. Charlize actually has a very good camera presence. You know, because sometimes Charlize, I think when she gets nervous, she'll mumble. So I really didn't know what to expect. Charlize had this very commanding, smooth kind of leadership undertone to her, and the Tone had his kind of like his, Tone doing Tony, right? But the balance and the chemistry between the two of them was a nice combination. Yeah. And so we want to bring them back more often to do some other things because they're inspiring. Like I was actually inspired. There was a sister that came on that they talked about. Somebody told me about the story. A sister came on and she lost her brother, and my heart goes out to her as well. And the way they showed up to that conversation, instead of just, oh, I'm sorry, they're moving on, they took a minute to talk to her and talk to the situation, and just to show the empathy and empathy and sensitivity was quite impressive. So I just want to say to Tone and Charlize, wonderful job. I was exceptionally happy when I woke up that morning. So that's pretty much my announcements. I just want to go over the chat option one more time. If you wish to chat, make sure you click on the yellow bar that says view on YouTube and you can engage in chat. Otherwise, you're just watching the class without the chatting option. Okay. So with that being said, let's get this ball rolling. I want to cover something real quick that I think we've done a bad job, and I think I've learned over, we've been doing this class now for 6 years. I'm going into our 6th year now. And there's some things I think I need to explain because I think that there's some restrictions that are placed on us that doesn't really fit our agenda, right? Let me talk about the value of this class and how we should reframe it. Everybody, please listen to what I'm about to say. I think when we're trying to become an entrepreneur, we're trying to use employment models to become an entrepreneur. We're attempting to use employment models to become an entrepreneur. We're also trying to use industrial standards to become an entrepreneur. And those just really don't apply. So in this one area, and I'm going to get really deep into this throughout the year, because I even heard it from some of the feedback. I listened to a lot of conversations, and when I hear people sound like they want to just change jobs, I don't think people understand they want to be entrepreneurs. That's something totally different. And the first thing I want to highlight is, imagine if you're in the NBA, and finally you get signed, and you stop going to practice. What happens to your game? It deteriorates. Imagine if you go to the gym, you finally get that six-pack, and you stop working out. What happens? You turn into a big person. I'm going to be respectful to all the big people. To a bigger person. You understand me? Yeah, I don't want to have nobody sensitive on this line. All your Me Too's back the fuck up. So anyway, so a bigger person. And then, so let's say, but I think what we don't hear is when we talk about entrepreneur development, we speak in levels. Similar to the way we see degrees. I got this degree, right? No one really says after you get a degree, how long does it take before that degree means nothing? But we say, I got this degree, and we don't realize, then we get a job, and the continuum of your training is usually maintained by that company. Why? Because when people hire you, they automatically know they have to train you and bring out your greatest potentials so they can maximize your performance so they can compete with other people in the market. But what is invisible to you is that somebody is actually planning your development. But when you become an entrepreneur, there's no one planning your development. That means that you should not see educating yourself as an entrepreneur as leveling up. You should see yourself as training and maintaining a level of training. Let me explain to you what this means. This is something else I noticed. I noticed some of the alumni I talk to, they don't watch the class as much, they don't read as much, don't study as much, but they think they are alumni because they think the training they did in high school still makes it where they can compete in professional level. They don't realize that that edge they experience from being in class, reading and learning and researching and practicing and studying, that edge of being able to walk in a room and being sharp and quick and make better decisions and foresight is diminishing to hindsight knowledge. Meaning that after something happens, you go, shit, I know I should have did this or that and the other, right? But I think what we have twisted in our thinking is that when people say, I read that book, I heard that podcast, why is it you don't listen to podcasts the way you listen to your favorite song? Why is it? Why is it you think you can listen to it one time and all of a sudden you own enough of this knowledge, or you get the depth of the communication to the point that you can now command that same level of knowledge? But we don't realize, or we think I only need to train when I'm facing a challenge as if that opportunity exists. So when a crisis hits your door, all of a sudden you can pull out the book and go, okay, it's time to go back to that book, that chapter 7 that said this is how you're going to address it. I mean, if you're not always preparing, your chances of performing has tremendously decreased. And whatever book you read, how many ever classes you've taken, if you don't continue the process, you will automatically return to the means, to your comfort zones. Like you don't realize, okay, like how many of us grew up in a household where people watch TV every day? How many people grew up in a household where people came home and just had conversations and went to bed? How many people grew up in households where no one's really sat around and processed deep thought? It was kind of like, we just talk and we chop it up, we laugh, we watch TV, entertain, go to bed. Then that's your means. That's your comfort zone. And it's always calling on you. And if you don't practice, this is who you are. And I think where we went wrong is saying this is a year of hope. Right? Maybe I don't want to tear this, I might tear this down, because maybe it don't fit no more. Maybe I need to call it just the Hope Foundation and get it redesigned. Because you really can't train for a year and make serious progress and just stop. Because what happens is once you stop training, you go back to autopilot, right? Another thing is that stop asking us for a curriculum. Stop asking me for a curriculum. Let me tell you why you don't get a curriculum. Because a curriculum is constantly being adjusted based upon your needs. If I was able to create a curriculum without engaging you through a process of insights, that means I am arrogantly telling you I know what is good for you, and I don't even know what the fuck's going on in your personal life. I don't even need to know what your challenge. I know how to get you from point A to point Z, and I don't even know who the fuck you are. I ain't never been over your house, ate a sandwich, nothing. So the reason the curriculum is always adjusted, like we have a kind of a base, a soft base, but the reason we're always adding and removing and adjusting is because as we learn more and as we get more feedback, we're in a constant adjustment mode. Why are we in a constant adjustment mode? Because it hasn't been done before. Tell me about the Black University that's pumping out Black entrepreneurs left and right. So the curriculum doesn't meet the idea of development. That need for curriculum is because you've been trained to go to a school to get a certificate to be approved to go get a job. You've never been trained to think. You've never been trained to own your own life. You've never been trained to raise your kids. You've never been trained to be in a marriage. You've never been trained to deal with your own psychological limitations, your own psychological biases. You've never been trained. And so this class is taking on a challenge that is not common for school infrastructure. So when you say, well, in school we do this, why shouldn't Hope do that? Because Hope doesn't have the same fucking challenge. It has to constantly adjust based upon the feedback. That means I'm constantly listening to you guys, whether I'm reading the comments at the end of class, whether I am reading the feedback, whether I'm having discussion with individuals in class who are kind of like the scouts who are constantly listening to students saying, hey, Donna, here's a common issue that we're hearing from the students. And then we're making those adjustments to build a class that's designed for you, not from this is what we think is best for you. Because honestly, there's tons of information, but who in the fuck are we to tell you that our information is the best information for you? Next, let's go back to this training thing. Stop asking me for tactics. You need principles from me. You don't need tactics from us. Let me speak to you. If we taught everybody in this room how to play football, and you guys represent, everybody in this room represented a different team, everybody online represented a different team, and we taught everybody how to play move by move by move by move, none of you guys are going to the championship. Because in order for you to go to the championship, you have to understand the principles of football, and then you have to be able to manipulate that to give yourself a competitive edge. You can't gain a competitive edge by just tell me what to do, boss. That's called a job. Your goal is to learn the why. Why do you do this? Why do you do that? Why do you do this? And then that gives you the ability to manipulate, reduce, amplify. You have all these options handed to you by gaining the knowledge of the principles. So as an entrepreneur, a lot of these values and principles we're introducing to you, I'm going to help you see the validation of it. So next week, I'm going to introduce a new book. The book is called The E-Myth. Let me say something about the E-Myth. The E-Myth is not it's lightweight, but it's heavy as fuck. But it's lightweight. Because a lot of things he talks about, he makes it sound so easy, but it's really, really complex. And the complexity is what we offer here in Hope. But it's going to give you the infrastructure of why people get stuck why the small businesses either get stuck as being small businesses, and why do they eventually die, right? Now, do not purchase the book this week. We're not going to open the book until next week. This week, I'm going to actually hand out a podcast. This podcast is the best podcast I've heard in 1 year. I've heard a podcast, but this podcast I'm going to assign to you guys for homework is the best podcast I've heard all year long. I'm only want you guys to listen to this one podcast. This podcast I'm going to assign you is not meant to be heard one time. It's a podcast you want to revisit numerous times. Numerous times. I'm talking about numerous times. One podcast, if you haven't listened to at least 6 times a year, you're missing the point. This is a podcast, if you think this class is rich, this podcast I'm going to assign is so full of fire, I doubt if you fully understand it when you hear it. I'm sure as you grow, you're going to hear new nuggets. So there will be a podcast that will be placed on the class site by tomorrow. That podcast is my favorite podcast. After that, for the next month to month and a half, the podcast assignment will be the audio book of the E-Myth book. So don't purchase the E-Myth book. Well, you can purchase it if you want to take notes. But I want you to make sure that you buy the audio book, and we're going to assign sections for you to listen to because it's rich, it's heavy, it's powerful, it's on fire, but it's going to bring a lot of stuff into context. So now, I didn't put this as a slide, but I want to hit this one slide before we go to the next slide. In my research, while we were going for 2 weeks, I noticed something that's happening in the black community that we got to be careful of. Racism, the language around racism is distorting our analysis. In business, there's a lot of things that will happen to you in business that can be seen as racist, or what's wrong with black people, or black people got this problem. You know what black people have a tendency to do? And if you learn more about business, you realize it ain't black people, it's human beings, right? And I think there's a lot of ideas and strategies. In the podcast, one of the podcasts, and we go to the next one. One of the podcasts that we posted, it highlighted, before we get into some of the details I wanted to really highlight, but one of the things it talked about is 1 out of every 5 employees you hire, 1 out of every 5 employees are going to be exceptional. 2 out of every 5 you're going to have to train to become exceptional. And the reality is that when you hire employees, you don't find great people, you make great people, right? But a lot of us, when we meet black folks, we're like, I hired somebody black before and they were underperforming. Half the time it's not them, it's you. 2 is you don't realize that when you hire new people, your responsibility is to develop them. They don't come ready-made. If you assume they ready-made, it's probably because you're not properly analyzing the people you're hiring. And so, but a lot of times, I hear black people talk about hiring black folks, and we put it in a racist context. It's hard hiring niggas out here. That's the word I hear from black people. The reality is that, no, hiring people is difficult, period, across the board. And the cool thing about black folks is because of racism, we have more diamonds in the rough than you realize. But you got to realize that hiring is very, very complex because the average person hires based upon somebody they want to have drinks with or somebody they find attractive. And really, when you're trying to hire somebody, you got to rise above your biases to find the right person. So, but there's a lot of things I realize that when we talk about in business, whether it's practices that seem unfair or power dynamics, we attach racism to it. And when we attach racism to it, we almost shelve it and throw it away and don't look into it. And if we looked into it, we would find great strategies. And if we understood the why, we would actually learn more about business. And so I think we need to slow down a little bit. That's why I don't like social justice, because social justice is flooding us with so many bad practices that are anti-business. And so I just wanted, that's just a side note. So anyway, in the podcast, we had a whole bunch of podcasts. It was 2 weeks. So we covered framing, which I'm going to touch on a little bit later, probably in a near future class. But if you're not listening to these podcasts, you're missing so much in this class. Like, one of the things that where people have been busted is there's been people said in their feedback, how come we don't talk about this? I'm like, I released 7 podcasts about that. They explain it better than I could ever explain it, right? Which means you just told on yourself. That means that you're not listening to goddamn podcasts. The podcast is a huge filler and deeper dive into a lot of these ideas we're presenting to you, and it's like allowing you to develop this kind of 360-degree view of a lot of these classes that we're presenting to you. When you skip the podcast, you're skipping in-depth insight on the classes that we're presenting to you. So there was a couple of things I wanted to highlight that came from the podcast, and a couple of complimenting. One of the things I wanted to talk about was, hold on a second. Before we get to that, there was a couple of things I wanted to mention that I didn't put as a slide. Then we'll go to slides that I do want to mention. But one of the things talked about is that when you go back, these are just honorable mentions. That, like I said, 1 out of 5 employees that you hire are going to be exceptional. 2, speed doesn't mean progress. So a lot of times when you start a business or start working on a project, we think start really fast. We don't realize you should probably start slow. Start slow, develop a rich plan. But often we undermine the success of long-term projects because we focus on speed over moving smart. Another point he highlighted in one of the podcasts is school doesn't teach us how to think. Also, he said, another thing that he said is be aware of the they effect. The reason this isn't happening because they didn't do this and they didn't do that, and I fired this because they did this and they did that, and the reason I'm having an argument with this person because they said this and they said that. And what you don't realize is that you're escaping the real problem, which is you. You're probably the biggest problem in that equation. So the reason all those days are not happening is because you don't pay attention to your communication weaknesses and communication strengths. Another point he highlighted was the further you separate the cause and effect, the more you lose the ability to process it. So you stop seeing the impact of cause and effect. So if something happens, if something happens over here, and it's cause and outcome. Excuse me. If the cause happens over here and the outcome happens way over here, but there's weeks, days, and months between the cause and the outcome, then in our brain we can't see the connection. And so part of increasing our awareness is our ability to see the connection between I did this over here and this is causing this to happen way over here. And a lot of times we lose that connection and then we get into that blame game because we don't see the connection. Or things that just happened to me, or I'm unlucky, or we get into some mythical spiritual blames when it actually comes down to, no, you just can't see. And so in the end, we're going to talk about how can we help you develop see. Plus the podcast, we put out, he went into how to develop the ability to see that, right? So if you're not listening to the podcast or you're just skimming through it, then you're missing the solutions to some of these challenges.
Can I jump in there real quick?
Yeah.
I want to talk quickly about the Q&A that we had.
Okay, go ahead.
So if you didn't tap into the Q&A that we had, you missed some dope Q&A. They asked some really amazing questions.
They really did.
That a lot of people I felt, and there was a couple things I wanted to bring to the rest of the class because it was really, One of the brothers, I forget his name, he asked a great question, and he went into what he was doing, and then him and Nana had some dialogue. But it's something we call ready, fire, aim. Ready, fire, aim. And a lot of times when we have business ideas or we want to do something, we perfectionism, getting stuck in perfectionism is a ready, aim, fire mentality. And you get stuck at the aim. And you want your aim to be so perfect. You want your aim to be so perfect. So you get ready and you're aiming. You're getting all your shit together. And your website got to be perfect. And this got to be perfect. And your product got to be perfect. And everything got to be perfect before you launch. And everything got to be perfect, perfect, perfect. And then that perfect can last years because you're too afraid you haven't perfected it yet. And so what we teach in the class is, you improve it along the way. There is no such thing as perfection. And it's ready, fire, aim, which means you get ready. And where the brother where the brother was having questions is that in the ready part, what is that? That ready is you do all the research. If you're like, damn, I got this idea for this new bubble gum, and this gum, it does this, and it freshens your breath, and it cleans out your. Well, is it out there yet? How much is it out there? Who's doing it? Who's your competitor? Who's your potential competitors? What's the price point? How big is your competitors? Like what's the area? Sometimes we think God gives us the only good idea. Sometimes we think God gave us the only good idea and ain't nobody else doing it. The ready part is the research. Once you do your due diligence with the research, then you fire. You go. And then you tweak it. You make adjustments. You tweak it. Same thing as you see how this class has evolved. It's not like Nana waited until he can do all of this and then, okay, we're going to put this class out. That's 5 years of evolving something from an idea, putting a product out and saying, shit, I could do better. Let's do better. Shit, I could do better. Let's do better. And look at it. So that's your business. Your business should look just like how this class has evolved. Ready, fire, aim. Then you fire, shit, I'm off. Let me fire again. Okay, I'm slightly off. Boom, now I'm hitting my target. And that's what entrepreneurship is. And that's one of the good points from that Q&A.
Can we just add one little 5% to that, but it's a tweak to calibrate. So for those, because sometimes I think when you guys hear it, look, what's dangerous also is when we talk about ready, fire, aim, we can get too internally caught up in our processes, and we don't realize that any process you have, if it doesn't align, that's not human-centric, meaning that the customer's not asking for it, it doesn't matter. But a lot of times teams get so caught up in like that working thing where we got this tight-ass shirt, we're going back and forth in these meetings, and we're discussing the material, the lines, the material, and we realize the public doesn't give a fuck. The public doesn't care. When you're in business, you're not selling your ideas, you're delivering what the customer wants. And so when whatever process you have, whatever that ready, aim, fire, what you're going to find out is the reason you can't be a perfectionist because you don't know what the customer wants. In the podcast, he said a lot of times one of the biggest flaws human beings think is that we think what makes sense to us makes sense to everybody else. And once you realize what makes sense to you only makes sense to you, then you can't see the customer. Because you can't see the customer, you need to start shooting warning shots immediately so you can get feedback. And the feedback is because perfection is driven by them, not by you. And so for you to show up and serve the customer based upon what they want, any type of imperfection that you're engaging in, it means you're too internal. That means you're treating your business like you have a job. And you're so excited about your accomplishments, but you don't realize that only thing matters is your deliverables, not your accomplishments. So you can be inside and having all these great meetings and buy beautiful computers and beautiful equipment, but if you don't deliver a customer experience, you don't have a business. And that's the difference. Well, when you have a job, you're rated by how well the process works, how well you guys have meetings, how well you have these short little wins for the ultimate win, right? But in business, it's how well are you aligning with the customer? And if you're not aligning with the customer, all the rest of this shit don't even matter. Don't even matter at all. All right, let's jump into a couple of points I do want to highlight from the podcast. Okay. One of the things he says, your goals have to be better because potential is unrealized. Your goals have to be to get better. Your goal has to be to get better because your potentials is unrealized. I don't think he said that. Okay, what is he saying? If you don't have a natural goal to get better, you'll never see your potentials. You can't realize your potentials. You can't imagine your potentials. You can't even contract. This is what my full potentials are. You don't know what they are. A lot of times, if you talk about your potentials, you're talking about past failures and successes. Your actual potentials are unrealized. And the only way you'll ever discover your full potentials is you have to practice the whole idea of getting better. You have to have a hunger just to naturally just get better. I think what bothers me a lot of time is that folks are chasing a goal or chasing an item or chasing a level, not just getting better. Because who you could possibly be is on the other side of that. But that's that dark tunnel we talked about in the past. When you start off on the tunnels to improve and become greater, you won't see where you're going. But you just got to have a hunger just to get better.
Yeah, and if you have target a person, say who's a guy or gal in your industry that you look up to, and it's an icon in your industry, and that's who you're competing against, and that's who you're chasing, then it could very well happen that you can make rash decisions, quick decisions that are unfavorable to the level that you're in the moment, because you competing with somebody that's 10 times doing 10 times better than you. If you just focus on fuck whatever else is going on, I just want to improve myself. I just want to get better. That's how you grow, and that's how you get there.
Yeah, that's so well said. I've seen that often where people, what would Bill Gates do? It doesn't matter.
Yeah,
you
come
too
on,
fucking
blood.
far away. No, just cut it out.
Come on,
Warren Buffett said, "Why do you even give a fuck? It has no value to where you are in your strategy." Another point he says, "Don't see your day as a group of tasks, but a group of experiments." Meaning that don't go through your day just doing one task, next task, next task. Start experimenting with those tasks. Start exploring. Well, what is like he said? If I'm in a meeting one day and I don't speak, what happened? I'm in a meeting next day and I took leave, what happened? Like literally start testing yourself at everything you do daily and looking at it as I want to start measuring and experimenting and seeing if I can do something different here. If you're not constantly doing that, this is the reason he brought this idea to the forefront is because he's trying to get you out of autopilot and raise awareness. And if you're just running through your day, you will be surprised how many days you'll be on autopilot, achieving the same thing you achieved before you started this whole journey, which is nothing, because you're in autopilot. In order for you to get out of autopilot, you have to start treating your life as an experiment. Start trying different things, exploring different things, analyzing different things. Next point is, he said, get confused. This shit right here is so powerful. Most of us hate being confused, especially in the black community. Being confused almost feels like it's an attack upon us. Getting confused, meaning that try to do things that create confusion or find comfort facing confusion or run towards confusion as opposed to running towards comfort, because that's where your improvement comes from. Confusion is where you grow. If you go back and think about any time you had huge growth, it's in spaces of confusion. When you're comfortable in a space, that means you're not being challenged. When you're not being challenged, that means you're not pulling on anything special. You have no reason to expand your wings and fly any higher. At the end of the day, you're just kind of maintaining a mundane, safe space. Your goal is to go out and get confused. This is part of growth. So many people are scared to get confused because they want to feel a sense of, especially if you feel like you're not good enough, being confused often will often tickle that mental part of your brain that says, I'm not good enough. Go get confused. Put yourself in spaces where you don't get it, where you don't understand it, where you're like, wait a minute, but that don't make sense to me. Good. We're in a good space now. If everything makes sense to you, what you created yesterday is going to be created again today.
That's why it's so important to keep reading and keep learning, because the books we read, they humble us. They put us in spaces where we're like, fuck, I thought I knew and now I don't. Or it challenges what you know. So anytime there's a challenge to what you know, it creates confusion. So if you're not reading constantly or listening to podcasts constantly or trying to upgrade your thinking, then what you know gets further embedded into your mind and you start holding tighter to it. So then you're moving around spaces in a way more confident attitude when you should be moving around spaces vulnerable, confused. Shit, is that right? Is it not? Shit, I don't know. Let's figure it out. Like, you move in spaces where shit, I don't know. Us as black people, man, a lot of times we have such a challenge saying, I don't know, or I was wrong, or I fucked up, or shit, let me do some research. Like, those things are so challenging to come out our mouth. And that's one of the things that prevents us from progressing at a rapid pace. Fuck, I don't know. Let me go look it up.
Next point he highlighted, and this is the same podcast. This is one podcast that we dropped. By the way, there's another podcast about distraction. I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. But that distraction podcast was fire. But anyway, he said, let's get away from the idea of BSL. Bad, stupid, lazy people. Kill that off in your brain. One thing I realized is that most people are good. When I say most, I'm talking about in the 90s. Most people are good.
Yeah.
But what happens is that we project, once you believe people are bad, stupid, or lazy, and once you believe your people are just a bunch of niggas, that's what you project on them. That's how you show up to them. Part of our personal growth is we got to remove these ideas, because when you're running a company and you have an employee that does something that doesn't make sense, if you show up to like more curiosity, exploring why they did what they did, what you'll find is that you'll find out they had a bad rational. They rationalized it in the wrong way, or they analyzed it incorrectly, or they saw it differently than you did, or they had different experiences than you did, and so or your communication was broken down, or what they thought you wanted. So there's so many possibilities of distortion in communication and expectations when you're working with another person. But if you automatically assume somebody is bad, stupid, or lazy, you will unconsciously work to prove your point. You're like a lawyer in court trying to, yeah, I hear you, but I still believe your ass is stupid. Right? And so at the end of the day, we don't realize we have to let go as a basic mental model. Most people are good. This is important even for how you feel about white people. Most people are good. If you start from there, you'll understand the heart of racism. Because sometimes somebody else's fear may turn out to impact you, but it's really their fear. And once you realize that once you understand that most people are good, you can see how we got there. But you can't see how people get someplace, and nor can you manipulate the situation. Because at the end of the day, look, you point out something you don't like, what does that do besides victimize you? Because in the end, you're left there with this conclusion that this person is good, bad, evil, whatever you want to believe in. But if you can understand that person, that empowers you to deal with the situation in front of you, even if you think the person is extremely racist. So remove the BSL. Like in politics, they sell to us this morality argument all the fucking time. But in politics, you don't need motherfuckers to like you. You just need this law to pass. Right? It's like you keep acting as if people need to be your friend, or people need to be in love with you, or people need to value you. Stop making yourself so fucking important. Stop acting like all TV channels turn to you. Like, matter of fact, you're not even on TV. You have a website with a video. That means you're amongst millions and billions of people. Cut it out. You're not that important. Once you accept you're not important, it's not because I'm trying to shrink you. I'm trying to empower you. Once you realize you're not that important, then you can move amongst others and understand, like, well, where's he coming from? Why is he thinking that way? What's happening around me? But when you think you're important, sometimes the only sun you can see is yours.
Oh, yeah, that's real. I mean, and that's another time where the humility can come in. I don't know if you ever played a sport or been involved in anything where you say you were the best in your neighborhood or the best athlete in your school, and you got a college scholarship, and you was the shit. Everybody knew your name, and you had your name in the rafters, and then you go off to this D1 school, and your whole team is full of people like you, and they better than you. And half the school athletic teams were the best kid in their city. So now, like, a lot of times people get depressed and humbled as fuck because they realize, damn, I'm not that person no more. And either they get better because they realize, okay, now I'm amongst people like me. Now the work starts again. Or they so stuck in the past, then something happens, they quit, they leave, they get kicked off the team because they want to go back to being that person. So entrepreneurship is always being in a space of, okay, shit, is going toggling back and forth to valuing yourself and saying, I ain't shit. Valuing yourself, but at the end of the day, I know I ain't shit. And going back and forth so that you can keep toggling your value up and down, and that's how you progress.
You won't take things for granted when you have that kind of mindset. You won't take your position for granted. You won't get lazy. You won't sleep on your growth. You won't become entitled to your growth because you realize I'm here because I'm putting the time in, but I can also not be here if I don't put the time in. But when you think you're special, you start thinking you just deserve to be somewhere just because you fucking open your mouth. Next one. He says, seek to understand before seeking to be understood. Mm-hmm. When you walk into your office or you walk into any place where you're working with people, slow down on trying to prove who you are or seeking for people to understand you. Understand others in a moment of conflict. Understand others when things are not working in a certain kind of way. Quite often, this is how you learn how to be a better person. There's so many ways, the old phrase, there's so many ways to skin a cat. But so many often we only deal with strategy A or strategy B because we don't seek to understand, we seek to be understood. So in this business thing, when you're walking around, that's why entrepreneurs ask a lot of fucking questions. I can tell when an entrepreneur's in a room. They are curious about a lot of shit because they want to understand. They realize if they walk in that room and just start talking, that means you'll want to be an entrepreneur. A real entrepreneur realizes there's so much shit I don't know, and there's so much shit I don't even have the time to process. So when I got some free time, I need to process some new shit. Or if there's something that happens, like for example, and let me give you real time how you should experience it. Let's say you go home and something in your house happens. And your first response is your means response, which is, what the fuck? Right? You mad. Silence yourself. Back up for a minute. Process the moment. Then try to figure out, well, I wonder why this happened. And then turn it into a question. And when you turn it into a question, lower all your guns. Put all your weapons down, raise your white flag, and say, hey, let me ask you something. This is what I experienced from you. Can you explain to me, can you help me understand what just happened? That in itself will allow you to just move somewhere in the conversation and build a strong relationship. But if you walk in that room like, why you do this to me? You blew it. Your guns was up, and why was already accusatory. Accusation. No, accusatory, yeah. So try to seek to understand before seeking to be understood.
In sales too, this is extremely important. That's how you form your pitch. If you jump in there, hey, how you doing? Here's my sales pitch.
Car salesman.
You lost because you lost hella valuable intel you could use for a better pitch.
Gym salesman.
Shoot the shit. Hey, what's up? What's going on with you? Yeah, hey. And then let me understand what your pain points are. Where are all your pain points? What's going good for you in this thing? What's going bad for you in this thing? Well, how was your last experience? What happened? Well, they was always late. Oh, you hear a key word, late. So now in your pitch, you're adding the punctuality of your service in your pitch, which makes them perk up because that was their pain point. Like this is such a valuable tool that's new is new in my business. I used to always just shoot first out the mouth. This it can make you some money.
Next one. Create clarity over control. Okay, this one is so fucking dope. Stay with me for a second. In business, a lot of times you think you need to control your business because you just don't see people. You see people as they just need to do what I say. I'm trying to run this business. They just need to do what I say. So often you turn up your control. Plus, many of us was raised in households where our parents controlled us, right? We went to schools, especially our poor, fucked up schools we went to. It was all about compliancy and control. And even this COVID era has been about control, control, and control, right? In business, what often causes the most breakdowns is lack of clarity. Clarity. Everybody, if you go back to the original idea that people are good, people attend the best, people are not lazy, people are not stupid. If people don't have clarity, they do stupid shit. Quite often, clarity falls on your lap. So in communications, like your design, okay, clarity is not just choosing the best words. Clarity is not speaking with a soft, airy voice. Clarity is not being social justice and, okay, I don't want to offend you as your pronoun asks me to do. Clarity is checking in with the people you speak to and making sure they understand, and then also gaining knowledge of the emotions around the communication that you're trying to have with them. For example, sometimes when you communicate with somebody, they may have emotional block. They may have a bias. Clarity is for your ability to analyze people around you and see how they're receiving it. Also, learn how the human brain works. That's one of the things you're going to learn in this class, how learning works. So a lot of times, well, I told you means nothing. Maybe when you told me, it wasn't clear to me. Maybe when you told me, I didn't receive it that way. Maybe when you told me I was talking in my head and you were talking at the same time and I missed half the words you said. Clarity as a manager, your job, number one job as a business owner, a number one job as a leader. And I'm talking about leader from business to public leader to political leader to leader in your own fucking family to your own kids. Number one goal is clarity.
Hey, check this out. It's so real and it's easy to say, but it takes hell of practice to create the space for you to A, ask questions, and B, seek to understand and to gain clarity. That deep breath that we talk about, that deep breath before you ask is so fucking important because your brain, your autopilot brain already has responses ready, and if you don't stop, then that response came out. And even sometimes your mind will tell you asked nicely. At my dad's funeral, it was split up between my dad's family, which was kind of, in St. Louis. My dad's family, good. He come from a good family, but my dad died a crackhead. So it was a whole section of the other side, all hood, crackhead, dope dealer, crack, all that shit. So they split up. So they were having a little rift between the two of them. So I'm like, let me fix it. Because, it's my dad's funeral. I don't want it to be no problem. So I go, what's going on? They doing this and that. So let me walk over there. So I go to the crackhead side and I asked them nicely, like, hey, what seems to be the problem? And they said, if you don't take your California ass back on the other side. And I looked, and in my mind, I thought I said, can you repeat what you just said? But I guess what came out was, what the fuck did you just say to me? And the whole side jumped up, and it was melee. Melee at the funeral. And so stories. I'm staring at my dad like, oh man, you got it cracking even on your last day here. But in my mind, I thought I said it nicely. I thought I asked nicely, but it's that pause and that deep breath so that you can combine where your mind is and what your words are so that you can really get that clarity.
Last one in the podcast I want to highlight was the feedback loop. Let me share a story. So the other day, I'm going to try to remove as many details to respect my son's privacy. So the other day, we was at the stairs, and they had this dude who was kind of in a bad space. And so I walked by my son. I said, son, remember when you was in your bad space? He said, yeah. I said, you was like that dude over there. So then I was like, he don't get what I just did. And when I came down the stairs, I said, son, let me say something to you real quick. You're not your thoughts. You are not your thoughts. But your beliefs can become you to you. But you're not your thoughts. Now, if I can't question your beliefs, how can I parent you? So when I say you were becoming that person, it's because you were believing you was that person. But if I ever come to you, God made you perfect in every possible way. You're magnificent. But your thoughts are flawed. So as a business person, one thing we learn is that if Court talks to me about something I was doing or something I'm representing or some way I'm showing up, he's not commenting on me. He's challenging my belief systems, my thoughts. Some of you guys make all your thoughts, you personalize all your thoughts. So if I say, hey, why you wear that shirt? Well, who are you to tell me what shirt? I just asked you why you wore the motherfucking shirt. I don't know why you even thought it was that serious, right? But in the end, we're so protective that we destroy our feedback loops. If you're not getting feedback not only from strange people, but even people in our own communities and your employees. If you have employees or people you're working with, your customers, you're out here building products and you don't have a feedback loop. Who are you building it for besides your own ego? And so that feedback loop shit is so critical, and you gotta create a feedback loop friendly environment for people. A feedback loop friendly environment is when somebody gives you feedback, you explore it. You don't defend it. Well, no, that's not what Marquita said, and Josh did say the same thing. So why you say that? That's not friendly. That's not friendly. Because now you're creating feedback friction. I mean, every time I try to give you feedback, I got to explore friction. Now, I may desire to give you feedback, but friction makes other human beings slow the process down. It's like we start picking and choosing when to help out. Another thing with feedback doesn't mean the person giving you feedback is the judge or one of the angels of God passing judgment on you. Feedback is just another person looking at the same problem from a different angle or sharing their ideas. That means it's just data for you to process, and then as you process it, you decide how you want to use it. But feedback is not a judgment.
Yo, one thing that can help you, detach as far as you can between you and your business. Detached as far as you can. So it's not your baby. It's not you. It's a business. So the further you can detach it, the less in your feelings you're going to get if somebody finds out or points out some flaws to it. Detach yourself. So then now it's like you're both looking at it and you're like, shit, that is crooked, huh? Yeah, it's crooked. But if you, well, I did my best. I didn't have nobody there with me. I didn't,
no one gives a fuck.
Man, come on, blood.
Killing us all.
We don't care. Like, the whole point is to make money. So detach yourself. Even if you can detach yourself in the moment when you're getting criticism, it's an opinion. And the more opinions you get, the better.
And look, listen, let me get, we're trying to keep this shit as real as 100. I'm going to keep it 100. You should feel a sting, embrace this fucking sting. Like when somebody gives you feedback and it feels like somebody hit you in your nose and you kind of feel like, whoa, what the fuck, right? Embrace that feeling. Know that feeling's coming. Get used to it. It's like, okay, I bought this toothbrush that vibrates 40 times a second. Some fast moving toothbrush, right? The first time I put that shit in my mouth, that shit tickled the death. I can't do this. This shit's tickling, right? This felt so much better than this. I said, okay, I don't know how people use this. Must be for kids. I don't know what the fuck they brush their teeth with, right? But I was like, yo, but 40 times a second, that means I can brush my teeth in like a minute and a half. This shit is fire. I'm going to learn. I just kept brushing. Now I'm used to it. I don't even feel it no more. But that first 5-6 days, that shit was unbearably, it tickled a little bit too much. I'm not into that kind of tickling, right? That's beyond freaky shit. That's just tickle, right? And it's like, but what happens is that I embraced that energy I didn't like. I don't like no tickling shit, right? But I embraced it because I want my teeth to be better, right? I'm saying in business, sometimes people give me feedback. I really don't want that person to give me feedback. But I need to create a feedback-friendly environment. So when that person gives me feedback, I got to validate that person just like I would validate a guru or a scholar who walked in the room or this powerful business person who's trying to give me insight. Meaning I'm creating a feedback-friendly environment. But you can never get that if you always, picking and choosing. Because like, for example, let's say I chop Court head off. Well, Shabi, she ain't going to tell me shit. Because she ain't going to be next. Right? So at the end of the day, it's like part of that feedback loop is, hey, man, lower that machismo shit, lower that pride shit, lower that sensitivity shit. I had to say pride because we got some Latin brothers and sisters watching, and the Latin women got pride. They got that shit's powerful. They don't play with that, right? But lower that shit, right? Lower all those defense walls that we use to protect that fear, that scary person on the inside. Because in order for us to get strong, we're going to have to build a real relationship with ourselves. A lot of those walls are designed to protect us, but it's also keeping us weak. Right? It's like we're not exposing that part of ourselves. And after a while, those feelings go away. And after a while, you also build up like resources in your life. So you have people, because they give you feedback and they're like, this person gives me really good quality feedback. You have people that you'll start reaching out to. Hey, I'm working on this new product. I want you guys to come over by the house and I want you guys to give me your insight on this product. So now you get this rich feedback loop happening, right? And now you're gaining clarity. But without feedback, clarity, and developing a good business model, close to none. All right, real quick, we have any questions before we go to the next part? Any questions? No questions? We keep rolling? Okay, well, okay. Hey, man, come on, you going to the mic. You all good with me. Go ahead. The mic is proper height. Stand up to that. Is that to do it? I'm out running when this class is over. No, you can sit down. It's really sit down. Go sit down. Go sit down. Yeah, there you go. It's a Ray Charles effect.
I took my tall moment from you, though.
You said what?
You don't have a tall moment. You don't have a tall
No,
moment.
Anyway, go ahead.
The Lauryn Hill unplugged.
I thought y'all loved me. First off, the podcast this last 2 weeks was hell of fire. I
Right
almost
on.
crashed my bike like 6 times listening. So I have a few questions, since nobody else does, because I don't know how you can not have questions with all those podcasts. And I believe it was the first or the second one when they were talking about hiring, and they were going through the variations of, 2 people you're going to need to put work into, 2 people are kind of just going to be like fuck offs, and then you'll get like that one person. What do you do when you feel like you're coming up against those odds, but you know you need to grow your team, but you're hesitant to get like the 2 duds? Like, how do you break past that barrier?
So when you say, well, you come against those odds and you don't get those 2 duds?
Yeah.
Okay. The book I'm going to release next week is going to deal, because that's a big question. Hiring is it's a lot. And I think I'm cheating you to try to make it a short process, because there's a lot of, but hiring is more damaged by your biases than the people that are coming through the door. And your ability to read people, and you have to learn the art of hiring, but also you got to also be comfortable with the loss. Like hiring is an act of probability, meaning that when you take that loss, you can't chalk it as a bad experience and then use it against the next person. It can't compound itself. It also can't be something that if you have a bad hire, don't focus on what they did wrong, focus on what you did wrong. But in that process, one of the things you can, the reason I'm going to release this book, because it's going to get into a lot of details about how you show up to your hires, and you can find out the way you show up to them. The problem is a lot of times we hire people and then we leave them alone. We assume, here's the savior for my business, and then we set them up on a journey that they're not equipped for, and then when they finally fail 1 or 2 years later, we think, there's something wrong with them, when it's the way that we set them up for failure. Mm-hmm. And so as you stay present and continue to engage them, you can then work on the development or see, this person can't be developed, right? And often, too, with a lot of people, when you hire people, you're trying to develop them, never expect them to be able to truly state their potentials. If you ever watched American Idol or whatever show, there's a lot of people get up there and think they can sing and they can't hit a fucking note to say that they sound like me. And then there's a lot of people get there who think they can't sing and they sound like me in the shower, which sounds amazing. To me, I think that sounds amazing. But the reality is that people can't measure their own talent. And so a lot of times as an entrepreneur, it's our job to see their talent and then to help develop that talent. But to give people tasks, because a lot of times we're so busy, we're so stressed out. We're like, look, these are things I don't want to deal with, and these are things that stress me out. Or you'll say this, these are things I'm not comfortable with. I'm not comfortable doing my numbers. I'm not comfortable doing accounting. I'm not comfortable sweeping, mopping. So you give them all the things you're not comfortable with. And because you didn't show up to that space, because at the end of the day, you put a limitation to them, you literally just throw a person, you threw a wild animal in your company and said, make some shit happen for me. And then when they fail, you go, oh, it's me. No, it wasn't them. It was, you have to first own those processes you want them to show up to, and then you have to hold their hand to release them into that experience, and then you have to watch them and constantly help them develop themselves in those spaces. And then but if you don't do that, and if you're not, and as well as you got to also create a pathway for their growth. Right? There's things that human beings need, and a lot of times we just look at them as filling a void because I'm stressed out, I'm overworking, or I'm uncomfortable with these areas, I'm going to hire somebody to fill these voids, and that's our first big mistake. So I want us to really dive, the book we're going to get into is going to allow us to dive deeper, and then we can take that as, we got to create multiple branches to that question, but that's not a simple, how do I hire the right person? I'm going to teach you a lot of principles in the next 3 weeks about hiring people, dealing with new employees, developing people, and then what are the things inside of you that's causing you to have breakdowns in those areas.
Okay, my other question, I don't know, it may just be, you can tell me if I should just put this on the back burner till after we go through these next few lessons, but I had a question of how do you help your employees to realize their potential when you don't understand your own or your company's potential?
Yeah, and that's really about, if you go back to what we said earlier, we'll get deeper into that, we'll dive deeper and add more roots to this, but if you got to build a company that's about getting better, that has to be company culture. If company culture is not getting better, that means that you have to first show up. Like part of parenting is, in order to lead others, you have to lead yourself. Remember we talked about that a week ago? If you're not showing that you're constantly improving and getting better, don't expect anybody on your staff to do the same thing. Your staff will really mimic you or mirror you. You know how mirror, you're looking opposite, but you're really copying the lead? Like once you're creating a business, you're creating a new belief system, a new way of life. And if the person who's creating the system don't respect it, they don't respect it.
Also, too, is the importance of having a purpose-driven company. So if you have a purpose-driven company, you move by a set of values. So those values are what you train to, is what you interview to. Your employees know those set of values, and your company is purpose-driven. So then that gives you permission to not be perfect. You can grow too within the confines of the company you created, which will also allow you to drive those values into your employees, and you all can grow together. So this isn't like, as a company, they're not going home with you, like they're not living in your house. Like it's a business. So they got a job to do, and they have tasks, they have tasks and they have things to help them become better at their job, right? And then second is you have to make sure that they're aligned with the purpose that you have in your company. So those two things you can do together, and you can do at whatever stage you are right now. And that can allow you to grow.
Yeah, another thing in business, remember, we have so much we don't get into, but internal branding, a lot of times we think about external branding to customers. We have to think about also internal branding to your employees and your team. And I will say, though, human beings have false expectations of leaders, too.
Fuck yeah.
Like, they think leaders are supposed to be
fucking
flawless and perfect. And so a lot of times you have to create a very close to that experience. So there's certain things in do's and don'ts we don't get away with when you're a leader. I'm sorry. Just if you want to get wild, crazy, and weird, or goofy, or turn up, or get drunk, separate. Go do that to your friends that you're not leading. But with your staff and team, if I'm at a company party, I'm not getting drunk. Even though I don't get drunk. But if I did, I would get drunk. I wouldn't get high. I wouldn't flirt. I wouldn't be flirtatious. I wouldn't, because in the end, unfortunately, look.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Business is about professionalism. Professionalism has been bastardized for years because of .com cultures, everybody wearing hoodies and sweatshirts and T-shirts and so forth and so on. But Seth Godin says this, and this is on the podcast coming up. Seth Godin says it best. He says, when you get a surgeon, you expect them no matter what they went through that day, how they feel, the car got towed, they got in a car accident. When it's time to go to work, you expect them to be excellent. We don't expect you to be excellent, right? And we don't realize that professionalism is you always deliver on time. You always show up at a certain level of excellence. You always perform to what you promise. You stick to your promise. You don't get to use excuses. No one gives a fuck. If you practice excuses as you grow, the higher you get, those people are used to everybody delivering on their promises. Everybody's delivering a certain consistent quality, right? As you grow, you don't have room to start saying, oh, well, I didn't sleep last night. I was distracted, or my son got in trouble at school and I got to leave, right?
No.
I don't
Nobody
really give a
fuck.
shit. No one gives a fuck, right? Because we're all interconnected. It's like I'm performing and I need you to perform so I can meet the needs of my client, right? So what I'm saying about this is that when you're a leader, you have to show up with a level of professionalism. If you're not being professional in your leadership, then don't expect your team to deliver professional to the public.
And then in the Distractions podcast, which that shit was hella dope. Thank you.
Yeah.
That felt like a gift.
I don't think what's pissing me off. I bet you a lot of people don't listen to that one. And the Distraction podcast. Hold on, let the train go by. That Distraction podcast was full of fire. Oh my God! And I don't think folks can, because it's not talking about distraction as a whole bunch of external tools and how the media, and it's really you. But go ahead.
Yeah. Anyways, that was so fire. But in that podcast, I'm trying to read through my notes. So they went over like being internal or external, and like those being your triggers and identifying your triggers. And of course, like, I can just speak for myself. So when I'm reading all of these things and I'm constantly learning, and I don't know if other people feel this way, some points when I get really aggressive about learning, I feel like I'm over consuming because my brain doesn't have enough time to process and catch up. And I'll keep going, but then it's kind of like my dyslexia kicks in. It's like my handicap, and I'm just like, okay, like, what did I read? I read that like 7 times and I still didn't get the concept. But one of the things that I was trying to figure out is like when I'm hitting that block, like what is it, internal or external, that is stopping me from pushing past that? And even more so, like when I'm leading my employees or when I'm trying to get my daughter to get a lesson that I've constantly modeled in the opposite behavior of what I want them to do, like how do you create an environment both internally and externally that is producing less distractions?
Boundaries and your why has to be cleaned up. So boundaries is like, I think, I think one of the podcasts I just recently put out talked about creating boundaries, right? I'm going to put out, this next podcast is going to have that involved as well. If you don't understand the boundary game and you're just trying to please people, because I think we got this pleasing thing fucked up. And we're pleasing people like employees, not entrepreneurs. It's big difference. Big fucking difference, right? That's why I want to do some calibration around here, because I'm hearing too much employee talk. Even from a lot of entrepreneurs I know who are doing really well, making a lot of money, still talking like entrepreneurs. And you can make a lot of money and be, assuming they're talking like employees, you can make a lot of money and become a slave to the job you created for yourself, right? But I think some of your approaches to how you're consuming information and your why, you're practicing staying in a rhythm. You're not compounding. Like if you work out hella hard for like 1 year and you don't work out for the next 10 years, it means nothing. It means nothing. It's nothing but bragging points. Like, yeah, 10 years ago I used to be hella strong. Yeah, but you're not now. Cut it out, right? The reality is that you can stop when you're overtraining. You're training almost like as if you have a destination. You don't. It's a lifestyle. When it's a lifestyle, you read until your brain can't. And you create boundaries so you can have time to show for yourself. Otherwise, you don't have time. If you don't show up the time for reading, thinking, engaging, practicing, experimenting, more than likely, you're just protecting a lot of bad values, beliefs. emotional spaces, and you think you're changing, and it's really an illusion, right? Change is really a lifestyle. It's a practice, and you have to develop measurements so you can stop lying to yourself. Because when I say lying to yourself, not the intentional lie. I'm not sitting there trying to be your judge. The same lie that we tell ourselves when we wear sweats for 2 years and we go and put on that suit that we ain't worn in 2 years, we realize, oh shit, the pants belt buckle won't fasten, because we didn't have proper measure set points, right? And so at the end of the day, there's a combination of things, of boundaries, and your why. Your why is distorted, and that's why I opened up this class saying I think we need to go back and revisit this again. Entrepreneur training is, as long as you're an entrepreneur, you should be training. When you stop training, you are no longer an entrepreneur. You don't get to call yourself an entrepreneur and not do entrepreneur shit. Right? And I think that's where we got the shit game fucked up, is we got this egotistical Oakland culture where we bosses, we players, we pimps, we entrepreneurs, we business people, and we broke. You don't get to say that unless you're doing the work. Like, I don't call you can't say I'm a professional basketball player and you don't have professional practices. So I think once we get back to that and you start framing it around a practice, then you're lighting up some of the pressure you put on yourself. Like, I should be like, okay, well, damn, I already put in 3 hours, and I put in 7 hours the other day, so I probably need a day off, right? But if you're not looking at it like that way, you're looking at it as, how much more information I need? The whole idea of thinking I need more information to be better is a distortion. You need to improve your rhythm to get better. You need to become highly aware to become better, and you have to increase your wisdom to become better, and you have to be more accurate in your thinking to become better, but you don't need to be smarter to be better.
Yeah, and what is the intention? So what's the whole goal? Why do we come to this class? Why do we read the books? Why do we listen to the podcast? Is it to know or to grow? So if the intention is to grow, it's not, the whole goal is not to know shit. It's to practice what you learn. So the excitement comes in is not how much did I read, it's how much am I practicing from what I read today.
Because based on what he just said, you can learn something in this class, be like, oh, that was deep, wow. Have an emotional reaction to it. Right? Yeah, oh, right? You did that shit. But you didn't finish working on shit you was on last week. You already on to the new shit. So you got a recency bias. Like, ooh. Like they say, you're like a kid in a candy store. You don't know how to focus, right? And the reality is that if you're growing, you're learning, but you're also still, this is what I'm practicing right now, right? And this is how I'm testing myself right now. And it doesn't mean you have to do one thing at a time. That's not what I'm suggesting. That's silly. What I'm suggesting is that this self-help culture got people fucked up because they think it's about how much information can I espouse when I see people, or I can share these ideas, I can be the smartest person in the room. No, it's how much of this shit have you adopted and become, and how much of this shit do you practice? And like, even when you practice something, like for example, let's say you playing professional sports, and right now you playing a wide receiver role, so your main focus is how to catch. You might not be practicing how to throw. But then something happens where you get a new opportunity where you have to throw. So now you have to practice how to throw. You're not practicing how to catch. So you're always shifting your practicing your skills based upon what that is. So it doesn't mean that you have to just accumulate everything, because some things are not applicable at the moment. But what you're also doing by increasing awareness, you almost know where to pre-shift your studies and your learn, because your high level awareness. But if you're just in that running with your head down, man, you're a sucker.
And then I have one last question. I'll take it offline. When they were talking about BSL, specifically lazy, so like I struggle with being kind to myself, but in my head, people tell me all the time I'm hella nice to everyone else, but hella mean to myself, and I'm trying to figure out how to see what other people see because my perception is off. But a lot of times in my head, because of just the life that I've lived, I have a fear of being lazy. So I tell myself, you being lazy, go do whatever the hell you need to do, right? Because my comfort zone and my natural rhythm is to chill the hell out and not do anything. But then I tend to be way over aggressive on myself. How do you create a bridge between that, because I think within that BSL, like that's my number one thing that keeps me tied to my storyline is you're being lazy.
I'm gonna jump into that in a minute because that's in part of the class. Okay, one question? Okay, all right. Boy, you just changing right in front of us. That's all I gotta say.
Me?
Yeah, yes, you. Mhm.
Oh, yeah?
Yes, you are. Yes, you are. Amen.
Okay.
Getting a little fly every day. I see you.
Yeah.
After a while, we're gonna have to keep you chained down because you be flying.
Listen, catch me while you can.
Price is going up. Price is going up.
Listen, price is going up. This is from, I think this is Mark Gaskins.
So, Mark.
Can I make a request? I love y'all family, but some of y'all have y'all business names, and some of y'all have y'all aliases. So, I mean, I don't want to blow up your spot or anything. If you need to be incognito, do what you got to do. but if you ask a question, can you tell me who I'm talking to so I can shout you out? Unless you don't want to be shouted out. I mean, I don't know what you do in your personal life. I ain't going to judge you. But this is from the Village Methods Programming, which I think is Mark.
Yeah, sounds like Mark.
He said, husband and wife team here. What if one is able to be detached, but the other is the opposite? How do you aid the other to walk back without distancing from the relationship?
Wow, he asked me how to change his wife? Is that what he just asked me? Mark, man, come on, man. You gonna ask me in front of everybody?
Go back.
Hey, listen, man, listen. One of the best ways I know if you're working with a partner is you gotta be the lead of the ideas you're trying to push. And if it's not, and another thing too, because as a person see growth in you, it's easy to inspire. But that person hasn't want to grow on by themselves. Plus, husband and wife businesses are very difficult. They're very, very difficult. One, it really makes the feedback loop kind of awkward. Two, sometimes sometimes we marry compliments, which is great. Like even in business, my business partner is a compliment to me. Right? We're not exactly the same. We complement each other perfectly. But sometimes instead of you trying to make them be that, maybe they just need to be the role they're in, right? But then figure out how that role can work for you, right? Or what is the strengths of that role? Sometimes flaws have great strengths that go along with it. And so I would probably need to hear more, but I think that's something we need to take offline because I really don't like to tell people how to, like that's relationship stuff. No matter, because you really can't separate business and personal. And so what you just say, hey, now let me holler at you real quick. Hey, man, how do I change my wife? Ooh. And then tell me in front of all these folks, ooh, if your wife ever watched this, ooh, it's going to be bad.
They watching it now.
Hey, hopefully she's not watching it. If you are, Jedi mind trick. You're not watching this. Mm-hmm. Okay, so anyway, I'm moving on for safe. But yeah, Mark, hit me offline. We can talk about some strategies of how you can change yourself and inspire your business or how to work with what you have, right? But what I don't want to do is talk about her, and I don't know her because see the problem with her is so many unknown knowns, right? Like she's so complex. It might be clarity issue between the two of them. It might be interpretation of the story. It might be there's something in the house that's unresolved, and that's her outlet. I don't really know. And I ain't really ready to get my hand slapped for making up some shit. Because that's all we're doing is making up some shit. And so to keep the shit at 100, for me to really answer that question, I really have to sit with him and dive into that. But I ain't taking cats, husbands or wives. Player rule 7654. Look it up. All right, anyway. Let's jump into Cold Extraordinary Mind. So real quick, we're gonna go back to the Culturescape. We'll just kind of tap here real fast. We're gonna keep moving fast. So I got some heavy shit for y'all tonight. See the Culturescape and the awakening. So once you learn to see the Culturescape, which is these ideas and these group of beliefs that surround you that are dictating your reality, there is going to become awakening, right? Matter of fact, sometimes we think about Culturescape and awakening. Some people call that being born again, consciousness, right? Now, I don't want to tie it to religion, or nor do I want to tie it to African-centered thought. But what I mean by consciousness is as you start to see things, you start to gain this sense of empowerment because you have the ability to change it. Now, once you are able to see, your growth is accelerated by your ability to accept and reject ideas. Your ability to say, I accept this idea because it works for me, and I reject this one because this really doesn't work for me. I'm going to trade it out for this idea. Your ability to change those things out is when you see the most aggressive change in your personal behavior. Most people are running around in life trying to make old beliefs work. Your empowerment is when you realize you have the authority over those beliefs. Second thing, and this is the most important thing, if you're trying to get an entrepreneur mindset, which I'm going to take time to separate an entrepreneur mindset from a manager's mindset and a technician's mindset. But if you're trying to gain an entrepreneur mindset, you are a manufacturer of reality. You can't manufacture reality if you can't access reality. In order for you to access reality, you have to know that many things you believe in are other people's ideas of reality. And if you don't see that you have the flexibility to adjust those, tweak those to your liking, then you're probably not embracing entrepreneur thinking. So your ability to manipulate reality and adjust reality, pick and choose reality, is the foundation of entrepreneur thinking. Entrepreneurs are constantly shifting, changing, impacting, flipping reality.
Yo, if you feel weird, people become less and less weird. People that you used to judge for being off and weird and different or eccentric or corny or whatever become less and less of all of those things as you become more of an entrepreneur.
Come on.
That's how, and then
That's hot.
you know you're deep into entrepreneurship when somebody's like, oh, look at that part. He hello. And you like, oh, I like that dude. He's
Yeah.
dope. Like, have you sat down with him and talked to him? He actually won't. Because what we do, our jobs is to create reality. We're building an infrastructure. We're pulling it out of the motherfucking air. And so in order to pull it out the air, you have to dismiss and disregard what people call reality, especially being a person of color, especially being a black person. Like you have to distance yourself from what people call reality in order to build some shit.
That was so good. I was waiting
Oh,
for
you
some,
want-
I was waiting for the fucking balloons and confetti to fall. That shit was accurate, 100% accurate. So as we move to this belief thing, I'm sure that every podcast I've put out so far is shared with you that one of the number one reasons people are failing in life, period, is beliefs. Beliefs. Not their blood, not their skin, not their the house they were born to, not their birth luck, but their beliefs. You are not your beliefs. The sooner you understand that, the sooner you're on the track. Because if you don't get this point here, you're going to go into business and just be a manager, and that means that you've already created your limitation. You cannot compete in the land of the wolves when you're trying to organize every goddamn day. I'm not. Entrepreneurs need managers because managers is the complement to an entrepreneur, right? But you can't be the head person in charge and you're the manager of your company, because the way you think. You're thinking within the limitations and within the structure. You're not thinking as far as the possibilities of where to go. You're looking for approvals. You're looking for interviews, acceptance letters, checking boxes. You're not doing entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurs are like, man, okay, thank you for the boxes. Who's going to make the decision? Let me talk to that person real quick. Entrepreneurs are routing themselves to decision makers, and they're creating these bright lights to attract decision makers to negotiate change. But what they're not doing is spending time talking about all the limitations that exist around them. And because why don't see as limitations? Because they realize the limitations are just an idea somebody created to protect their interests. And you can create another idea to protect your interests or to drive your interests. For every interest that has something built to protect it, there's another idea that can design to override that interest. Now, there's something that he talked about in this book that in the Code of Extraordinary Mind, and I really want to double tap. This here is so important, the theory of computational thinking. It trains you to look at problems from all angles. That's the first thing. If you're engaging in computational thinking, you're learning to look at problems from multiple angles. And then you learn to break it down into parts and processes. So like, for example, let's say there's a big problem that you're facing. You don't go, oh my God, this is a huge problem. You first look at the problem from multiple angles. That's going to help you avoid your biases. Number two, you break it down to processes and parts. That means you're chunking it into smaller pieces, right? Next, you're identifying what is the pattern. Then, here's the coldest part. After you break down the pattern, one more piece, then you learn to solve the problem through a linear process. But here's the coldest piece. You learn to produce replicable solutions. That's the part we're missing in computational thinking. Yeah, we're analyzing it, we're chunking it, we've seen the patterns, we're learning to solve it through a linear process, right? So that means you take a really complex problem, you look at all the different angles, you learn to look at it, okay, here's the patterns I see, here's the possible approaches I have, here's a solution, here's a linear process of reversing it to create a solution. But what we're forgetting is that now we have to turn it into a replicable solution. Now, computational thinking was placed in Code of Extraordinary Minds. And some of you guys are reading Code of Extraordinary Minds and you think it's all about emotions. But one thing anybody in business would tell you that you're taught in school that all your problems is out there. But in business, all your problems is in here. So at the end of the day, when you go through the computational, one of the reasons you guys don't build successful businesses should never be based upon who you are. If it's based on who you are, you don't have a business. You're just a freelancer. The way you build a business is when you solve problems by analyzing those problems and creating replicable solutions. Those replicable solutions is the foundation of what we call a business, meaning that business lives outside of you. That means that anybody from anywhere can come along and solve that problem because you built out a replicable solution. Many of us solve the problem and we're on to the next one. Don't forget the replicable solution part. That shit's so important to building a business that if you don't do that, you're trapping yourself into being an employee of your own business, meaning that you become a slave, meaning that you cannot even fucking call in sick. At least at job, you call in sick and somebody paid you. In this situation, you got to show up every day, deliver product, turn the lights on, whatever you got to do, because you never built replicable solution. That word just makes my black tongue twist. But replicable solutions, I have to slow down and say it, right? Because it's almost like I'm throwing up, right? But the point is this, if you do not focus on that part of computational thinking, because even the 360 part, many of us look at things from 180, or we get, going back to the frame. So in the podcast, we talked about framing. Framing is not only a tool you use to process ideas, but framing is a tool that many people use to manipulate you. And the way they manipulate you is they only give you one small angle of a problem. And if you don't have computational thinking, I can whoop your ass time and time again with framing. When you learn computational thinking, that is the ultimate superpower against framing manipulation. So framing might say, hey, you know, I can give you a number and be like, okay, 55 people did this, and 35 people did this. And I may leave all the other numbers out. You realize this fool only gave me one number. He's manipulating me. Like, I promise you, I saw this through the media during COVID, how many numbers were thrown out all the time where they give you one side number, which all it did was drummed up fear but made you stay tuned to their side to see what's next, what's happening next, right? So it was used to manipulate your desire for sensationalism.
Or I can say, hey, how do you feel about Ashley being crooked?
I framed it already. You're done. If I bring a camera in and show you something like, look what's happening in East Oakland, I just framed that for you. Whatever I told you from this point, because I put all the beautiful lights, excellent camera, beautiful angle, perfect lighting, your brain's like, oh shit, this is going down in East Oakland? But when you develop computational thinking, you go, wait a minute, hold on a second. What else is happening in East Oakland?
Exactly.
Everybody's doing that?
Exactly.
What are different angles? What's causing that? I'm going to get into something deeper in a second. But I'm saying, like, computational thinking, like, we're about to get into some shit for a second, because I'm about to give you guys some really good business strategies. Now, let's go back to your beliefs for a second. I want you to think about your beliefs in the context of a computer. Your beliefs is the hardware. So in this business stuff and everything you're talking about, when you guys talk to me or you guys are talking to each other, I want you guys to go another layer deeper when you analyze yourself. I want you guys to try to figure out what is my model of reality. Model of reality, for example, let's say, matter of fact, there's a book I was just reading where Amos Wilson and Tversky was talking about, this is way before COVID, said a disease broke out. And, oh no, that was in Cold Store. I can't remember where this shit comes from. But anyway, the point was a disease broke out. And the question comes down to, we could save this many people. How many people should we save, right? And if your model is nobody should die, even though people have to die, because that's your model of belief, it often will put you in a position where you will not be part of the solution. Because that's your model of belief. If your model of belief says that this world has a cruel way of removing certain groups of people, it just does. This world's always done that. But if you don't accept that, then when the same incident happens, if you accept that a certain amount of people have to go, then you're equipped to work on a solution that may save 200 or 300 people. As opposed to, let's say you're trying to save 400 people. You may be able to save 200 people because you believe that, hey, some people have to go. But now let's design a system. But if you try to save everybody, you will actually thin out your resources and save less people.
This is a leadership class, so y'all know. The other classes down the hall.
Yeah, that's right. All the emotional Me Too and social justice down. Shakina just went down there to make sure everybody was okay.
It's leadership.
It's just, they down there, they all right. In this leadership class, your model of reality is the core deep down belief that's driving a lot of your decisions. You have to start analyzing it. Right? That deep down idea. We're going to point out a lot of models of belief, models of reality throughout the year. Once you understand your models of reality and you start to tweak those, remember I said earlier, believe that all people fundamentally are good. That's a model of reality. Now, when you meet people, you're starting from that basis when you analyze people. What's the foundation you're using when you think about the world, people, business? If you're not looking at that foundation model, you can learn all this stuff in class and fuck it all up because your foundation's fucked. So your model of reality has to be on point. Now,
a lot of times our models of reality comes from fucking years of cartoons we watched, movies we watched, households we live in, churches we went to. It's all based on illusions and made up shit. So if you are living this hero's journey in your mind right now based on a cartoon you watched, favorite cartoon as a kid, then your life today is going to be a sum total of that bullshit. So the best thing you can do is to break that or reprogram that hardware within yourself to shape your beliefs again.
The hero idea, which comes from television, that one person is going to come in and grow a business and be successful. That so rarely ever happens. Most times, successful business comes from groups. So if you got that idea of individual, when things get rough, you quickly default to the hero story. Or when things get stressful, instead of you trying to retrain this person and humble yourself and gain insight, you default to, well, I don't need them. I can do it by my goddamn self. Meaning that you're still an employee stuck in your motherfucking business working for yourself. So part of the hero idea is sabotaging, and it ain't come from you. A lot of these flaws we have that you're going to discover in this class, do not go home and waste your time going, I'm a bad person, because that's a flaw. This is cultural flaws. These are reality flaws. These are people, human being flaws. These are Western flaws. These are American flaws. These are mental, psychological flaws. When you're running a business, you have to work towards your potentials, which is getting better. And in getting better, you have agreed to constantly find out your own.
Yeah, and the dope part about this is this. As we discuss a lot of times in this class and this year, is your stories are about the workability of them, right? Are they working for you or no? If it's no, then fuck the story. Get the story up out of there and create a new story for yourself. So if you have stories that you live by that aren't serving you, they don't work no more, then fuck them. But if they work in the moment, if they're a flawed story, understand that you're going to have to replace them at some point. When I was young, my whole dream was save my mom because my dad was a crackhead. So I wanted to save my mom and buy her a house. And so that story gave me hella juice and energy, right? But then when I bought her the house, there was nothing else to do. So where was the motivation? Where was the drive? It was gone with the house. So now I'm like, fuck, I need a new story. And I needed to be just as strong as the one I had with my mom, or I'm useless. So understanding some of those stories are bullshit, but when you step out your culture scape, you know they bullshit. But you like, it's working for me right now.
Yeah. Next, your software is your habits. This is why you have to come out of autopilot. Because who you think you are, a lot of times when you want to discover who you really are or you wish to be revealed to yourself, you have to pay attention to your habits. So if you think I'm doing this, I'm doing that, look at your day-to-day habits. That's the software, and that is upgradable. Just upgrade the software, exchange the software, find better software. But know that your habits is something that constantly has to be adjusted, has to change. And so a lot of your habits are not your beliefs. Your habits are empowered by your beliefs, but your habits also require habitual awareness. Next one. I'm going fast because we got some good shit coming. Our model of realities are programmed by the world we grew up in. I just said that. Our models of realities, good or bad, determine our systems for living. In short, bad beliefs create bad habits. Bad beliefs create bad habits. Our modern models of systems are lacking in conscious practices. Let me say, did y'all hear that? We've been talking about this for about a month now. Our modern models of systems are lacking in conscious practices. We're only just beginning to realize the power of our minds. So, let me bring this back one more time. We're gonna engage some dope ass business books, leading business books, impactful business books, and watch how they keep coming back to your mind. Because here's the thing, I can give you the dopest strategy in the world. Guess who has to implement them? Let me help you out with a better picture so you can give you a picture. Imagine you come out your house and I have delivered to you the fastest car in the world. But if you can't drive it that fast, you'll never experience it. That's simple. So at the end of the day, you gotta remember that if you're not working on yourself, all these strategies you will learn, and like Shakita was saying, she's getting these strategies download. But if she is not showing up to these strategies correctly, then she's not maximizing her results.
Yeah, there's a saying, there is no difference between the man who sits up and does nothing than the man who reads all the books, knows all the shit, and does nothing.
Same person.
No difference.
Next one. Never get attached to your beliefs or habits because you know better ones are out there. Everything you believe in, there's better ideas out there. Everything. When you start defending ideas and habits, you are practicing the defense of stupidity. You are a master stupidity security guard. I just wanted to say that. That shit just felt good. so reality, like, cause in the hood, you know, like, I mean, come on, man. Let's keep this shit 100. I don't want to sound like, you know, like we square, like we was born in square lives, but in the hood, cats get offended real fast if you challenge an idea. In business, black folks get real mad when you start challenging. Especially like, hey, Nana, man, I got this idea. I've been working on this shit for weeks. This is the greatest idea. I know this is about to work. I talked to hella people loving me. Here's my idea. And when I tell them the shit is crap, they act like they found out I was sleeping with their sister. They mad as fuck at me. Right? I'm looking at them like, why are you defending these ideas and these beliefs? But we personalize these ideas and we personalize these beliefs, right? In business, and you know why you're personalizing it? And we'll get into this in a little bit. You personalize it because your value is attached to it because you see yourself as an employee. When you see yourself as a business owner, if you're building an entity and I say, hey, that color needs to change, you're like, hey, why does it need to change? It means nothing to you. It's an entity. You're trying to sell an entity. But when you worked really hard to paint that color and I thought it was this, you're thinking like an employee. That's an entrepreneur way of thinking. I always change. If a customer say the color is ugly, the color's ugly. If I come in tomorrow and Shakita worked all night and she painted this place a perfect color, and we all like, this is tight. And the first customer comes in, and then 20 customers come in and go, that's the ugliest shit we ever saw. I'd be like, oh, well, we need to order some new paint, bad color. I have no loyalty to that shit.
Real talk.
None. But some of you guys are making this loyalty to ideas and beliefs, and in the end, you're stuck. Let that shit go.
I lost a big client for early on in my company is because I had this loyalty mentality to my employees. And so my employee got into it with a customer, not Marlon, another one, got into it with a customer over right and wrong. And the customer was adamant about pricing or whatever. So my salesperson was like, Court, I told him the price. It's not fair. Don't change it. Like, because now it's making me look bad as a person. So I called him and I defended my employee. Like, this is what he said. I'm standing behind it. And the employee was like, all right, motherfucker, well, bye. Right? And I felt like, see, as your boss, I got your back. That doesn't do shit. We lost money every year from that situation versus telling my employee, look, who gives a fuck? You're right and wrong. What you think? We got to reframe this customer. And even if I have to say, hey, it's our fault or it was my fault, but because it was my fault, we're going to go ahead and give you the price that you thought it was so that we can continue this relationship. That's how you move versus this bullshit about right and wrong or trying to defend your employee. Like that, the mentality that we had, because in my mind I was afraid that if I turned my back on my employee in that moment and chose a customer side, he would think I was disloyal, because that's that hood shit. In actuality, the reverse is true in terms of what we should have did.
As if money's coming from the loyal gods. Okay, next one. I just want to tap this real quick. He was in the book, and this is when Vishen was sitting in the room, and the monk came up to him, and he talked about some of the symptoms of not feeling like you're good enough. And I just thought like we should double tap on this real quick. It says, one, you're defensive. So people don't feel like you're good enough, you're very defensive. This we've been talking about right now, lower your defenses. If you don't feel like you're good enough, it's hard to lower your defenses. Two, you have issues with your loved one. So you start having issues with your loved ones. Everybody, at the end of the day, because at the end of the day, they need to validate you all the fucking time. Because you don't feel like you're good enough. So now I got to make you feel like you're good enough. You motherfucker. Can't take criticism. When you don't feel like you're good enough, you don't like criticism. Who you telling? Well, maybe you don't understand. Okay. You want to become successful to prove you are worthy enough. That means you got into business not because you want to impact people. It's because you want to prove people that you're worthy enough. Why you spend money to prove? You spend money to prove to you. Okay, you spend money to prove to others. I mean, you buying cars and clothing and gear. You spend a lot of money to prove to other people when other people don't even give a fuck. That's your ego, and you're not feeling good enough. And last, why others' acceptance is so high on the why others' acceptance is so high on the charts. Oh, other people's acceptance is too high on your charts. So what I mean by that is like the Black Lives Matter. It means that you're looking for people to accept you all the time. This person accept me. This person, like, he didn't like me. He didn't care about me. He didn't think. Right now, we're in an epidemic in this country, where a lot of people in this country, they say there's the impact of having a lot of resources. That we're going through a depression stage. America's going through a depression stage, and this is where I will fuck with Fox News, because it's getting out of hand. The cancel culture, the sensitivity, the emotions. And really where that's coming from is we're dealing with a nation of people who don't feel like they're good enough. So I care about what pronoun you use. I care, like, think about this. Let's imagine, go back into your mind, those of you old enough to remember the cowboy age. Imagine a cowboy saying, can you call me a plus cowboy? I'm not a minus cowboy. Why? Because that's just not the fucking focus. They were trying to survive. We got to the point that we have so much money, so much resources. Like, you might think, no, well, I don't think I have that much money. Well, you ain't looked at the rest of the world. Only out of 8 billion people in this world, only 2 billion have running water in their bathroom. Right? So we have a lot of fucking shit. And plus we don't practice being grateful. And because we don't practice being grateful, what happens is that a lot of times we're over looking for people to accept us because we haven't learned to accept ourselves. I don't give a shit about black folks and white folks with Black Lives Matter. I'm not asking no white person to convince me that my life fucking matters. I matter to my motherfucking self. That's number one goal. And if you want your community to matter, then do some shit that matters. But don't be at home with a depressed ass life, hair all fucked up, screaming about Black Lives Matter. Get yourself together first. Like, practice the basics first. Make your motherfucking bed. Look, if you ever pay attention, a lot of motherfuckers be at the front of these fucking podiums with the microphone screaming hella loud, articulate with fancy ass words, saying nothing. If you actually go home with the motherfuckers, their life's fucked up. Fucked up. Okay, all right, I'm gonna get some people mad, but you know what? Fuck it, I do it all the time anyway. Motherfucking Black Panther movie with the Judas and the fucking hate that movie. It's stupid. I always watched that movie. I was mad as a motherfucker. You know why I was mad as a motherfucker? Because we lose in the end. We don't take creative what do you call it? Creative privilege or leverage to turn around and make our own story, like Quentin Tarantino did with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. He just changed the fucking story, right? But in the end, we always lose in the end, and white people come out victorious in the end, right? But here's a motherfucking thing that I want us to think, because now we're talking about leadership. You might want to tell people down the hall, close the door. But power to the people, what the fuck is that? When has that ever worked in human history? Who's gonna give up power because you're sensitive? If I had a war, I'd have fought people, suppressed countries, killed off more people than you want. I killed off over 160 million people in 2 wars. I moved trillions of dollars, and I'm about to change shit because a poor group of people said power to the people who had no power, had no relationship to power, who are only 21 motherfucking years of age. And now we paint a mural all over the power, the Black Panthers. Stop celebrating bad fucking ideas. Okay, stop. No, just stop. Okay. Meaning making machine. Let's keep going. And I get to tell you, hey, if y'all have some Q&A, ask me about that dumbass idea of power to the people. Power, if you remove power at the top, there will always be a power vacuum. And what you'll find is that sometimes the most liberal people they're another form of conservatism. That's what you're dealing with. So at the end of the day, if you're talking about shifting power, you got to build power to gain power. You don't get power from moral discussions and shouting and crying and talking about our babies and dying like that. You gain power by actually building. You have to have a relationship with power. Power is a whole different way of thinking. And if you're suffering from poverty, you don't go from poverty to power overnight and think you can carry that ownership. I'm sorry, that's just hella work. Like, even in my growth, if I was able to compress what I learned in the last 16 years and 3 years, I think I'd be in an insane asylum with a straitjacket around me. That's just too much shit to learn. So what I'm trying to explain to you that it's a long evolution. And so if you really talk about empowerment, the first goal is build some shit. Build a relationship with power. Learn to manage 400,000 people, 2 million people, 20 million people, 75 million people. Don't sit in the comfort of your motherfucking house, have a conversation with your partner, and tell us what 75,000, 7 million people, 40 million people should be doing, what's good for them all. You know how fucking difficult that is? That's why when I saw Libby Schaff was here the other day, and I was like, yo, I'm not praising her, I'm not hating her, that's not the space for this. But one thing I thought to myself is, because I didn't really want to talk to her, because I don't know how to talk to her. But anyway, I didn't want to talk to her because simple fact, I was thinking, I would hate to be the mayor of Oakland right now. Because all you take is one news bite, gains popularity, the pressure comes down on mayor, hey, this shit needs to change. First of all, you may not even have the power to change it. But number two, all of a sudden, this movement that started from an emotional space is now telling you how to change lives for 400,000 people. You know how difficult that is? You shift A, and this group over here is pissed. And you shift B, and this group over here is pissed. And so you got to find that central space where you can make a certain level of discomfort, but we can move the ball forward. Politics is fucking difficult. And so when you start talking about power to the people, look, love the kids because they were bold. Love the kids because they stood up when most of us were still, a lot of people were scared. I love that about the Black Panthers. But let's not revisit those ideas. Let's let those ideas die with the time. And I'm going to get into that shit way deeper than just my opinion in 1 second. Meaning making machine. This is shit. This one right here going to have y'all, woo. Look. a lot of times the meaning making machine comes from if something happens to you and you try to assume why it happened, but you didn't interview all parties involved. Right? Meaning making machine happens so often. It's so normal. When we're making judgment about people, we're adding meaning. When we see people every day, we're adding meaning. The problem with meaning making machine is it imprisons us in our own mind. It not only imprisons you, it imprisons your actions and your habits as well. Because you assume if I do this, this is mean this to these people. This is what people are going to think. This is what they're going to feel about me. This is what they said about me. This is how they judge me. They don't like me. This person said this because they listen. And what after a while, the people you see every day, they become ugly because you made them ugly because of the meaning you projected on them. Most of your judgment about others is not who they are, it's what you make them to be. Even with your look, I seen it. Look, I'm gonna bust all of us out. Your kid does something bad. He knew better.
Stop
How the
it.
fuck he knows better?
Stop it.
Your child is experimenting, doing what a child does, and you like, oh, that child's good. That child's bad. What the fuck is a bad child? A bad child might be a scientist in the making, and we can't even see it. That child is experimenting, and we're calling it bad. We are suppressing. We are literally a meaning-making machine on babies who don't even have the faculties to be the person we project on them.
Yo, and if we are putting this all together, if you go back mentally a few slides and in the conversations, first piece, if we assume most people are good in the 90s, right? You take that one bite. Second bite, you seek to understand before you seek to be understood. Second bite, and you include that into this piece. This is how you help heal and help fix that meaning-making machine. Because if now you say some shit and previously I would be irritated, I'm like, well, that must mean he this, that must mean he that, must mean he don't like me no more, that must mean he this, that. But if I say, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. This is a good dude right here. It's a good dude right here. I know this man. He loves people. Now, it crumbles the meaning-making machine. And then you add, hey, let me ask you a question. What did you mean by, what you mean
on,
with
tell
that?
him.
With knowing that you're a good dude, then you go like, oh, well, I meant X, Y, and Z. And you're like, oh, shit. That crushes and crumbles that bullshit-ass meaning-making machine that you have that can allow you to move in spaces without that prison and that anxiety that everybody in the world's against you.
And here's the thing with meaning-making machine. It starts as children, and you think the other kids called you ugly, so they must think I'm ugly, so that means I must be ugly. See, the meaning machine turns into your beliefs after a while. So now you're a victim of the meaning you created. So you say, other kids was mean to me. They were bullying me. No, you were set up that whole story to happen. And it's easy for then, when I hear, oh, Shakina was bullying Shabisha, I will now project on, I remember when I was bullied, which I added meaning, and now I'm going to attack Shakina because I projected the story and I don't know any of the details. None of the details. And this happens all the time. So when Mark says, how do I get my wife? I would have to engage meaning-making machine to even talk about his wife. Can't do it. It's not the space. Meaning-making machine is when you know, hey, you don't know, bruh. What the fuck are you talking about? And if you okay, it's okay to perform guessing and hypothesis. I wonder what it is, but it's when you start to guess and you start to make it feel like evidence. It goes from guessing to I got a little bit of evidence now. No, you don't. You don't know shit.
You don't know shit.
And that's why when you feel emotion, this is so important. This is why awareness. This is why autopilot is dangerous. It's going back a little bit. If you're in autopilot and you're not practicing awareness and you're not seeing life as a constant experiment and you're not moving through life where you're constantly like examining what's happening with you, then you're also not paying attention to your emotional cues. So for example, let's say you're hanging out and you walk down the street and Court makes a comment, you're like, oh, that bothered me, but I'm gonna keep walking. Oh, that bothered me, keep walking. And as you keep walking past those ideas, if those ideas start to sound similar, you can go home and say, oh, I must not have been, or I must have been. But if you would have stopped to ask the person, hey, Court, hey, what do you mean by that? He might be psychologically damaged. He might be suffering, and he might just be projecting on you. Because he noticed that, hey, you know what? I think I can get Nana today. I don't think he's that strong today. I'm gonna get him. I'm gonna say some shit. And this is what I think based on what my mini machine told me. Now, it's only contagious if I don't ask, well, where are you coming from? And as soon as he opens his mouth, you realize, or you say, here's another example. Oh, this is what you see about me? Can you give me an example when you saw that before? And quite often you realize they don't. They just made some shit up on you. But by that time we've already digested it. We going home. You know what? I ain't never really been. I've always been known to be a mean person, but sometimes I just gotta be mean. You're not mean. With your soft ass.
Yeah, I remember growing up when you're bullied in school and then you decide to fight, right? And all that buildup of the bully, and you ain't never getting bullied again, ever again. So then anytime you get a hint of somebody trying to bully you, you ready to take off. And me taking that on as an adult, a lot of my temper issues didn't come from just me being an angry person. My meaning-making machine would be like, hey, Court, is he trying to bully you? And you go, I think he is trying to bully me. And then I'll flash. And it took me years to realize why couldn't I stop myself? Because my body would be hijacked because it goes into full protection mode, like life or death, because it's saying, yo, if you don't protect yourself, it can mean your life right now. So you better whoop this motherfucker's ass with everything you got. And I couldn't hold back, to where the only reason why I was able to progress that was like, wait, time out. Is he trying to bully you? No, bro. Ask this dude what's going on. And if he had a horrible day, or his wife just left him, or his child is sick, or his child died, dude, he's having a bad day. It has nothing to do with you. And that allows you to re-enter into your mind the truth that can break this. So this shit right here, like, this will keep you from looking like a paranoid schizophrenic running around through life thinking everybody coming at you.
And destroying relationships, which goes to the next one, which is expectation effect, which is what you see in others could be the effect you project on them. What you see in other people is what you're projecting on them. I don't think you understand. I can tell more about you based upon your complaints about others. How you complain about others, you tell me. That's why when I listen to people are like, how do you read me so well? Because you got to tell me how much you didn't like this about Court, which told me all about yourself. A lot of times what you don't like in others, it really has to do with you. Why is this important? Look, when you become a manager and a leader and you ain't dealt with this space, you're going to undermine your success every time. You'll lose your staff over and over and over again. You'll be a lone wolf for a long time because you realize it was never your staff. It's always been you. Every problem you can ever tell me about every employee comes from you. And if you don't process that you're projecting on people. That's all we do is project. Like when I started practicing the game of asking questions, that shit is the craziest feeling. Because your brain will be 100% convinced this is what it is. Now you know this is what it is. Ain't no other, I done looked at every motherfucking fact in the world. This is what it is. And so they give you an answer back, you're like, oh, I didn't see that. I didn't even see that. I know that part even existed. Right? And it's like, it didn't happen. My son does it best to me. I walk in the house, I see all this evidence, I know this stuff. I'm like, okay, I know he did this. So me, my son said, come here. So what was that? What happened? What happened? I'd be like, okay, cool. In my head, I'm thinking, who think I didn't show him my real face? Because I want to be like, what the fuck you do that for? That's where I came from, right? But I had boy, what happened? What happened? Well, oh, okay, your mama told you, okay, that's cool, yeah. And I told her, babe, I want to go to her, like, babe, why you tell some stupid shit, right? I'm like, babe, why you tell her? Well, because this, yeah, that makes sense. Mm-hmm. That's literally what happens. And I'm saying, like, a lot of times once you see how much your brain makes shit up, you realize, nah, bruh, you fired, or you're not a consultant no more. You're not, no, you got other job, but that's not your job. I don't hear shit from you. And so once you start practicing this idea of checking your brain, going, dude, that's not what you're good at.
Nope.
Stop trying to judge it. You can't judge other people. That ain't what you good at. You know why? Because you ain't laying down with everybody every day. That's not like when I tell you guys all the time, if you ask me about your business, take my information I give back to you as tools for you to examine. Why? Because I ain't in your business. I can't see everything. The more you realize what you can't see, the more you design your life around your limitations, the more empowered you become. Your limitations is not designed to shrink you. Understand your limitations is designed to empower you. Next one. This is going back. Let's tap into parenting for a second. We're going to let's talk about parents for just a split second. What belief is my child going to take away from this encounter? I wanted to add this. This is in the book. He's talking about parenting. And he was saying when you work with your children, this is just so you can kind of, because look, this leadership shit is how you lead your children, how you lead your relationships, your friends, your company. It's the same. It's the same mental models driving it, right? They may look slightly different because you call one professional, one personal, but it's still driven by the same mental model. When you when you engage in your child, always ask yourself a simple question: what are they going to take away from this encounter? That will help you immediately improve parenting. Now, you may go to the extreme and fuck up and be a little tiptoe-ish and start sounding like a social justice white woman, and that might happen. But you can get yourself back. But you have to ask yourself, you walk in the room, what the fuck you doing? What are you going to take away from that encounter? You have to get that granular, because if you don't get granular, look, it may seem granular to you, but it may be obvious to them. A lot of times our children are just nothing but us. And the things we don't like about them is the things we can't see about ourselves. But the reason we can't see the things about ourselves is because we don't get granular enough with ourselves. We look at the big highlights and big pictures, and we miss all of those small details. We have a horrible feedback loop, and we don't take any time processing and thinking about ourselves. So you're just running, you're just doing and doing and running and running and running. You're like, whoa, why my son gonna cuss the teacher out? Did you cuss your partner out on the phone the other day for the same exact reason? Mm-hmm. Did you talk bad about the school the other day in front of him? Mm-hmm. Do you cuss at people when you get mad? Mm-hmm. So what the fuck you think your child's gonna do? He's gonna also turn into guru, and there's no guru in his life? He's just gonna download Jesus? What's happening here? Don't work like that.
iCloud.
Yeah, iCloud Jesus, huh? new website coming soon.
Hey, real talk, real quick is me and my sister my sister lives with us. Me and her kind of estranged because I won't let her watch my daughter. Because at the very beginning, she was like, well, we came out okay. Out of the 8 of us, 5 was crackheads. You went crazy, and the other one was one of the hardest dope dealers in the game. We came out okay? We didn't, but in your mind we did. So she had this this level of respect that my 2-year-old needed to have, and I'm like, nah, you can't watch her. No, you can't watch her because the way I'm raising her now, I don't want any of that residue that we had when we grew up around her. So when you hear, you can kick it with her all day, but I'm not leaving her with you. And she's hurt by that. But I'm like, I don't care until you can move in your mind that we didn't turn out okay, and that the shit that you holding on to is traumatic. Then she gonna have a different experience. And so it comes from asking that question. Like in any situation, she's standing there watching me like, wait, you just gonna let her check you like that? And I'm like, yep, she can check me and we're gonna talk about it. But I'm not gonna be like, who you talking to? You want a whooping? Like, she's 4 years old. Like, she learned that from somebody in this house. So.
Yeah. No. Just think of no. I wish you would, no. Y'all want to see, remember that old Kool-Aid commercial? They busted and they do Kool-Aid just come to the wall. Let me hear you tell my daughter she don't get a whooping. Watch me come to a motherfucking wall on you. I could be 3 walls too. Boom, boom, boom. Oh shit, here come Nana. I wish you would tell my daughter she don't get a whooping. Shit. This is one that I got to work on personally. I'm gonna just be 100% transparent. Why you do that? That's how we create meaning. That's the beginning of creating meaning-making machine with our children, as opposed to what happened. Once you say why, the child is forced. That happens, like, y'all see that, by the way, let's talk about that as adults. We got to be careful with that with adults as well. Why you do that? most people are not in tune enough to tell you why they did whatever the fuck they did. And so what happens is you're forcing a meaning-making process to happen with that other adult, right? You see it happen with the news media. News media went up to the run-ups with this here's a black dude, ain't never studied a motherfucking, not him, I'm saying, let's just say symbolically there's a black dude here. He's never studied one motherfucking day of social, cultural, evolution, politics, anything, right? Media runs up to him, hey, why do you think this is happening to black people? And he can articulate no matter how impressive his answer is. He's a basketball star, right? He's just won the NBA championship. No matter how impressive the answer is, he's just giving meaning to shit. He doesn't know. Meaning making machine is happening everywhere. Be careful with that word why. I'm somebody who's always working on it and I got a lot better. But I turn my awareness up so I can hear myself. So when I throw to like, why you do that? Like, why do I expect them to know, right? If they knew that, they probably should be teaching me. They like a lot of times, most human beings don't know everything why we do everything we do. But if you say, well, what happened? Person can just say, well, they can state this happened, so I thought this, or this happened, but they didn't give meaning to it. So just be careful with the word why. And it's like I said, it's something that I am personally working on. Importance of gratitude. Gratitude is necessary in this. Okay, look, man. Look. When you're on a long journey, this business stuff is a long journey, and some of us are going to run it until we die. Many of us will. Some of us are going to run it for a season until we got enough money where we're like, I'm done with it. But in this journey, you cannot move. You can't set happiness as a goal. Happiness has to be throughout the journey. You cannot hold back happiness. Happiness has to be a part of the process. But what steals our happiness is when we're not grateful, we're so busy focusing on what we want, we lose the happiness of the moment. It's this, what they call it the forward gap. We're chasing the forward gap. So we say, as soon as I get this, I'm going to be happy. As soon as I get that, I'm going to be happy. It's not true. 99% of the time, it's the process you're engaging in that gives you that. If you don't enjoy that process, you won't be happy. And while we're not happy, we're so focused on what we don't have that we often feel like we are without. So we almost manufacture the belief in our minds that we're without. We can be like, man, I ain't got no Jordans. Now you have a nice car, you have a nice apartment, you have a full refrigerator full of food, you have a beautiful mate. But somehow you ain't got those Jordans, so you're not happy.
Yeah.
Are you fucking serious? And the reason for that is because you don't practice being grateful. Mm-hmm. You have to sit down now, you can't be grateful when you want to be grateful. Grateful has to be built into a routine. I don't care if it's 2 or 3 times a week. Mm-hmm. Where you stop and say, let me sit down and process what I'm grateful for. Mm-hmm. If you watch this fucking social justice, it'll make you feel like life is fucked up. I see women and men in positions that not only are doing well, but in positions to do better. Way better. But complaining about what we don't have. Mm-hmm. It's because they're focusing on that forward gap. I'm not taking away that you should not have these things. I'm not taking away that you should not work towards those things. But on the journey, because it's so long, you have to get these wins on the way. And one of the major wins you have to have is you have to have happiness. Meaning that, let me get a little deeper. On a long journey, you have to accept the black swan. The black swan is something that happens that says, no matter how hard you work, you don't get it. Bad timing, wrong place, whatever. If you can't accept the joy of the journey, don't take it. Don't take it.
That's deep.
Because I can't promise you an outcome, but I can promise you that journey. Mm-hmm. And so if there's no joy on the journey, don't say, if I get there, I'll take this painful journey, so maybe one day I have the outcome I want. If you're not having pleasure along the way, we're not going to live to be 500 years of age. Life is short. Embrace the joy of the journey. And if it's not there, change the journey.
Yo, Pastor Chris, if you're watching, I know this. I don't know the scripture, but I know it's in there. It's a scripture in the Bible where it has a list of things for you to do. Seek this, seek righteousness, be kind, be meek. We do all these things. And then at the end it says, and maybe you'll make it into the kingdom of the heavens. And that maybe is there for that reason too. It's saying the journey still is supposed to be good. The journey's supposed to be worth it too. And then the making it into wherever that prize is, heaven or whatever, that's another thing that could happen. But it's a twofold instruction. I think the other thing is what got us fucked up is social media on Instagram. We see hella people who lives is balling. They on vacations. They sitting in infinity pools in these big ass houses. They bodies is perfect. Fucking 6-packs or crazy bodies and money and big stacks of bread that they hold into
Rick
their
Ross,
ears
I'm
and
sexy.
shit. And so that can cause depression because you're looking at this shit every day and you're comparing your life to this and you saying, what the fuck is wrong with me then? What's wrong with me? How come I'm not even close to this? And so without that routine to check yourself and say, wait, hold on. Man, I just breathed some air. That's pretty dope right there.
Man, come on.
I just breathed some air and I'm healthy. I can stand up and walk out this motherfucker.
Come on,
Or I
man.
can hop in a car or I can go home and hug somebody and somebody loves me unconditionally. That's crazy.
Come on, man.
So having a routine where you can consciously go over all the things that you're grateful for is going to help refresh you and reset you, especially in this dumbass social media time.
Man, if you was my son, he'd be like, I'm happy I can taste food. I tell you, that's how he feels. And he ain't lying. So it'll be our last two slides for tonight, but this is going to be, let me see. Okay, maybe I might let Court close out on one more slide, because the next one after that is kind of Court slide. It's just shit. Business-wise, the way you think, this is going to be, this is a practice. This is not something you're going to do. This is something you have to learn. You have to learn to separate the perception of time. This is a hard one, especially for people suffering from trauma. The past is gone, the present is here, and the future you don't know. Let me explain to you. So this is idea of sunk cost. I'm going to share a little insight from a podcast that's coming up. But it's talking about sunk costs. And this guy walked up to this guy, and he had printed this sign. And the sign was beautiful, right? But when he read the sign, he realized one of the words was misspelled. So he went to the guy and said, hey, man, I like your sign, but on your truck, but one of your words are misspelled. The guy goes, yeah, but I spent so much money, they don't just run and do. And then when they get old, I get some more. Okay, let me help you out. Think about this differently. If the guy was walking down the street and he saw that sign and the words were misspelled, would he pick it up and take it home? He wouldn't. The money he spent on those signs, that he's like, I just spent that money. No, that money was spent. That's the past. It has nothing to do with today. Today is something totally different. I was like, I spent money on this. Back then you did. Today is a different situation. We keep the past as a continuum string. We don't let the past break and get today a refresh and realize we don't get a redo, or nor does the past limit us on our future progress. You have to learn how to, otherwise, you can trap yourself by past experiences and you can never see the present. Meaning every time you're in the present, when things come up to you, your meaning-making machine, your emotions, your heart, your feelings, your discomforts, your fears are all tied to things that are gone. At 5, 6, 7. I used to say back in one of our previous classes, a lot of us have 7-year-old consultants, our life coaches, walking around with us every day. 7-year-old life coaches. And we don't realize it because we don't know how to, like, a lot of times when you spend money in business, if it goes bad, it's gone. You don't get the chance to go be like, well, it went bad, so I ain't gonna never do. Like, now you're trapping yourself in the past. Another one, I'm scared I'm not gonna be. I'm worried. What if I don't? What if this happens? What if I don't have this? What if later on this never happens? What if this is it? When did you think you own the future? What if you find out tomorrow you got cancer and you lost out on all the pleasurable moments because you were so busy worrying about what you don't have in the future? Present. If you don't understand what something means right here, right now, and how you are showing up right here, right now, you're misreading reality. That separation of past, present, and future, they're all strategical ways. They're all tools. Some of us are trying to move forward in life while our eyes are in the mirror. That means that you're moving in fear. You're not moving in creativity. You're not exploring. You're not moving in curiosity. You're moving in fear because you're driving forward with your eyes on the mirror. A lot of us overlove data. Oh, well, the data says that's overvaluing the past. Or you might say, I was reading history and this is the worst thing that's ever happened in history. Yeah, but before then, what was the worst thing that ever happened in history? And before then, what was the worst thing that ever happened in history? See, when you learn to think, and people are throwing strategies, because see, when you get in business and you start making progress, strategies will start to be flying your way. You open up your feedback loop, you're listening, you're curious. But now when the information is coming in, you have to develop certain disciplines of thought. The first foundational thought is learn to separate your thoughts from the past, present, and the future. Understand, well, I lost this. Okay, it's gone. I think there was a famous saying that if you were on your way to a movie show and you bought tickets and you get there and your ticket is lost. They say, well, you gonna buy another ticket? You're like, nah, I lost my ticket, I'm good. Then the person say, okay, well, you went to a movie show and you lost $20. You go to movies. Nah, why would I not go to movies? It's the same fucking thing. Your brain has this thing of not having a healthy separation between the past, present, and the future. And I'm not saying that it's okay I'm not saying that this is something that you're going to get right away. But in your strategical thinking, when you're working on business strategies, when you're working on leadership strategies, if you can't separate the past, the present, and the future, you're leaving room for manipulation. Now, this is where it's going to get hot. Quantitative versus qualitative. Oh, this is pimp shit. Mm-hmm. I'm going to go so far because quantitative, I'm going to have to come back to quantitative versus qualitative a lot. So let me help you out. Let me give you the foundation of quantitative versus qualitative. So quantitative is when you look at something mathematically. So you might say, we're having this problem in our company, and we want to look at the data. And we want to put numbers to what's happening in our company. So, 45 people did this, 60 people did this. If you did this, we have seen a 20% increase and da-da-da-da-da-da. Where we fuck up is we don't understand qualitative. What was the emotion that caused the change? So in one of the podcasts, he said some shit. I was like, you manipulating us. The one he was talking about reciprocity. And he said, one of the things they did was they just changed the words. And all of a sudden, the numbers went up by 30%. That's manipulation. Because you gave us a change in numbers, but you didn't give us qualitative. You just only gave us quantitative. But you also have to understand how does quantitative work. Quantitative is complex. And if you study humans and living things, you have to understand quantitative growth. Now stay with me. Actually, just understand quantitative and qualitative growth. Quantitative growth is the evolution of a human being, so from a baby to an adult. But a lot of times when we see things in society, we see it from a space of natural doubling of numbers. So for example, if something happens in a city that has 100 people, if the population goes to 400 people, the strategy that worked for 100 people no longer works for 400 people. Because you don't have an increase in people, you have something that's totally different. That's like your nephew who's been gone for 15 years comes to visit you, and you was there when they were born, and when he shows up, you have a bowl of Gerber food. He's evolved. What that also means is that when you study historical strategies, if you don't understand the size of the town and the things they had access to, you can't just copy and paste strategy forward. That means that when you study Martin Luther King and Malcolm X strategy, in California you might have a problem. If you read Martin Luther King's own work, he had an experience that was quantitative and qualitative. When he went from the South, he said, I was only dealing with 400 people at a time. I got to Chicago and it was 10,000 people. This shit don't work. This is important. So when somebody says, well, what did they do in the 60s, the 70s? Power to the people. Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, Marcus Garvey. There are some things that are transferable because it's wisdom. But a lot of strategy is irrelevant. They didn't have the internet. They didn't have the same population size. We went from 3 billion people, then around 3 billion people, to almost 8 billion people today. You know how many people that is on this earth? The Americas around 200 million people to 350 million people. That means all the old systems no longer apply. Why is this important? When you're reading history books and you're looking at old strategies and you're trying to examine the past, know that old ideas can't be applied so easily without understanding the different dynamics of what each group is facing. That means you cannot learn good business strategy from history books. You still got to test. Because there's different qualitative and quantitative challenges that absolutely changes the equation of your strategy. So somebody says, also, this is what destroys, this is a saying we all grew up with. Back in my days, young people used to, your population was different. What the fuck are you talking about? Why are we even having this conversation? This is why we can't think forward. You're stuck in the past. A lot of the conversations we have is so stuck in the past, we can't move the conversation forward. That's why when I get up in here, I'm like, fuck social justice, fuck a lot of these pro-black ideas, and fuck all these stupid shit that's happening. Because scientifically, logically, realistically, if you understand the thinking of a builder, I can't use that shit. I can love Malcolm without adapting everything Malcolm said. I can love Martin without adapting everything Martin. So let me tell you why that's also important. You know this. This is how you often manipulate it. Well, Martin said, why did they tell you that? To shift your behavior, shift your choices, shift your beliefs. Martin should be honored. Martin should be valued. But Martin is limited towards our moving forward strategy. Strategy has to be a discovery process. You don't get to copy and paste old strategies. I'm sorry. Old strategies can give you clues of where to look, how to evaluate, what tools to use. But I cannot go back and hire the original guys who built the Model T and hire them at my brand new Chevy Camaro factory and say, hey, work on these engines over here. Them cats be like, what's, look, you gotta tune this. I'm like, it's a computer chip. What do you mean a fucking computer chip? Oh, go talk to Larry. That dude don't work on cars. Oh, that's what a modern day mechanic looks like now. He's a programmer. I don't think you guys, if you don't have a healthy relationship with time, all you're trying to do is bring your past back alive, as opposed to embracing the future that's coming. That's a huge fucking difference. How did Jay-Z do it? I don't give a fuck. What was the size of the market at the time? If you don't get all that qualitative accuracy, your ability to evaluate past data is so compromised. So now, maybe when you come and say, what's wrong with these people around here? What's wrong with black people? What's wrong? Maybe you realize that the question you're asking is even fucking flawed. When you sit up here and be like, man, I just believe the Black Panthers, we just need some of that. Now you'll see the separation of why we're not moving the needle forward. Because we're poorly embracing the past. This is why, because I know when I speak to the public before we went private, I don't share every fucking thing because I don't really give a fuck about arguing all day long. I don't give a shit. I'm not going to deal with the depressed decide they want to make me their focus point because I don't give a shit. But when I have time to sit down with the leaders now, these are people who said, I want to go forward. I want to move forward. Then it's time to have leadership dialogue. And if you try to move people forward, you cannot be stuck in historical thinking that's untrained. And the first thing you want to learn is how to equate qualitative and quantitative equation in the way you process your past.
I have nothing to say.
I will let you're gonna close out the next one. That's yours. Okay, just real quick. I'm gonna let him close out the last one, then we go do questions.
External models of reality, intuition, mind, body, happiness at work. Is it possible to be spiritual but not religious?
Now, mind you, this is a trick. I'm challenging this. Okay, so I want him to be a part of this conversation because me and Court are similar but different but similar, right? I mean, we get to the same point some places differently, but I don't disagree with too much he does, right? And if I do disagree, we don't give a fuck, right? It's like he don't need to be my perfect fucking. I don't need to project a perfect model for myself, right? But let me say this: intuition, the way he spoke about it, I disagree. I think intuition is poorly often used because most people don't take the discipline to even tap into what is intuition and how does it fit, right? I think intuition has its place. I think intuition can be part of a conversation. But I think that it's poorly misunderstood because we don't understand affective realism. Affective realism is this blind emotion this blind energy we will feel, but our brain often guesses what that energy means. And because our brain is guessing what it means, we can easily confuse that with intuition. Right? But at the end of the day, we really don't own it, right? But that feeling that we get has a level of intelligence to it. It's just our ability. So, for example, you could think that you're having that you don't feel good or you're irritated, and it could be you're just hungry, your belt's too tight, literally, because that energy doesn't really know how to separate the two feelings. It's the assignment. Our brain is always predicting and projecting more than it is receiving and analyzing. Right? So I think because of that, until we kind of evolve and grow. Now, I do know that Court has a different level of discipline that I promise you from sitting with him, he's so uncommon to the point that I have to sit back and respect and listen to his idea because he has traveled a hell of a journey that I have to recognize that, right? 2, body happiness is at work. I agree. Body happiness is connected. Is it possibly spiritual but not religious? Now, I want him to speak on this. But we also know that some people use that spiritual language as ability to escape responsibility.
All right, well, let me jump to the intuition thing too. Is that, yes, I agree. We don't necessarily, most of what our disagreement happens is not disagreement. It's just framing of the word. And so where my disagreement comes because I came from such a spiritual journey to get here, scientists, when they write books on emotional intelligence, emotional agility, emotional anything, or business anything, they use the word intuition, and I don't like that shit. They should use a different word, maybe instinct. But I don't like because the world that I come from, I watched real intuition at work, and I can't unsee that shit. And when Vishen talked about going in the mountains and doing ayahuasca, I've done that shit 5 times. I used to go every year to the mountains and tap in, and so there's certain things and I can't unsee. But then we go back around and agree again because it's so misused and it's so labeled in people that it ends up just being fear most of the time or emotion most of the time. But actual real, that word rarely happens, or you have to be completely disciplined and completely tapped in to even feel what that feels like. Woo. So that's saying the same thing. And I think, and then the other thing is, those two are not disconnected. You have to, your religion is your car. It's your pathway. It's your tool for your own spirituality. So all religions, most of them will tell you that you have to have your own personal relationship with God. What does that mean? That means you are connected to spirit. You're become a vessel to God. Now, whatever pathway you choose to get there, that's your religion. So in order, we preach about this, and we preach about this in the class earlier, is that whatever your spiritual practices are, they have to add value to you, and they have to help you on this journey. Because especially this past fucking year, there's not even high highs, it's mostly fucking lows, right? It's all kind of things smacking at you, people dying, people getting sick, businesses falling apart, money issues, trauma, all kind of shit popping off, and the surface of who you are is going to get challenged. It's going to get cracked, and sometimes that layer goes deep down. And if your spiritual foundation isn't solid to where whatever you believe or whoever you are spiritually, if that doesn't help reaffirm you, strengthen you, push you back up, get you back that next morning for you to go out in the battlefield again, then you got to reevaluate that shit. In the church, your religion can't help you be spiritual. That's why there's hella people who go to church and fucked up. and depressed and don't got it together or lost it, right? So those two things aren't mutually exclusive. You always have to be working on your relationship with God through your religion to help you become more spiritual.
I got nothing to say. Questions? Hey, right on. Sure, you're right. Now, on your certain models of reality too, the one that most people are good. Trust me, add that one. That's a powerful tool. Like, even when I run across white people, most people are good. Even Barbecue Becky, or whatever they racist Becky, whatever they call it. Most people are good. A lot of times when you see someone, I got trolled. I did some photo shoot with Kelly, and because I got a chance to touch the new Canon R5, R5, and that was a spiritual moment for me. and so I called Kelly. I said, Kelly, come on through. Let's do a photo shoot real quick. And Kelly's like my go-to model because, one, she got the best clothes ever. I mean, like, Kelly never comes in here with whack clothes. Her creativity is crazy, and she's a hairstylist and makeup artist.
Crazy.
And so she's like everything in one package, right? And because we worked together so long, she hit all the poses, and our brains are trying to gel around the creativity space. So we're like one person flowing. So we shot for like 2 outfits, including change and makeup adjustments, everything done in 45 minutes. Beautiful shoot. So I post these pictures, and then, fashion is sexy. We embracing the sexuality of life, but we're also adding a classiness to it. Mm-hmm. So if some lady comes online and goes, it's not ladylike. Right? So when she said that, I looked at the thing, I was like, wait, what? So then I took a look at I went to her site to see who the lady was. And she just like depression with a pair of pants on, right? Just looks sad and depressed. She like somebody. I think she needs her own pronoun because she wasn't. I don't know what she was. She just looked sad, right? And so I'm sorry she did. But you know what was obvious? She had hella dogs in the backseat of one of these pictures of her car. Hella dogs. Like, no offense, just too many damn dogs in your car, right? It just don't make sense. So I realized, oh shit, you're depressed.
She need her own pronoun.
She's depressed.
That's fucked
So
up.
I deleted her response because Kelly and Sabrina took off on her, and they was shooting her with BB guns and shotguns and throwing rocks, and I was like, delete this. The reason I deleted it because she needs that. She
Yeah.
needs that. She needs somebody to come back because that's going to validate her.
Yeah.
I'm not going to validate you. I don't give a shit about your beliefs. Fuck, one person ain't about to even. You not only even scratch my car with your thoughts.
Right.
And so at the end of the day, let me delete this. Let me clean this bird shit off the tip of my car. Has no impact on my fine paint. And the reason, so I'm saying, like, at the end of the day, like, you got to get to the point where if you believe people are good, you're positioning yourself to realize, oh, I can see you, lady. But if I think people were bad, or I thought people were stupid, I thought people were lazy, there she is. See, I told you that's what's happening with the internet. All these crazy people. No, that's a depressed woman. Sorry for her. Unfortunately, she needs that. I'm sorry, I can't give it to you. Go find somebody else. Bye-bye. Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
There's a lot of question marks around her own pronoun.
I don't know what it
was
would
a
be,
cold
but it
one.
was just, she got her own pronoun. I don't know what
That
it
was
is.
a cold one.
I ain't gonna do that.
This question comes from Michelle Terrell. And her
You said
que-
Michelle Farrell?
Terrell.
Oh, because I'm about to hit a no for y'all. You lucky it ain't Farrell, because I was about to let y'all know I was about to do my Will Downing. But anyway, go ahead.
Praise
Go ahead.
God.
No, listen,
Praise
y'all don't want to hear that. It's too tight. It's too tight.
Her
Flawless. I'm
question-
like Rick Ross. I'm sexy on the vocals. Sexy. Go ahead.
What's happening?
I saw Rick Ross. He just kept calling himself sexy. I'm like, I can't do this. I can't watch you do this for like 5 minutes. He kept saying, because I'm just a sex symbol. I said, I'm just sexy. So anyway, I'm starting doing that for my vocals. I got sexy vocals. Sexy. Go ahead.
Michelle's question was, Nana in court, is there a connection between meaning-making machine and not feeling good enough? Are we inclined to create meaning when we don't feel good about ourselves?
Absolutely. Look, meaning making machine, look, if you don't feel good for yourself, you know how terrifying it is to ask that simple question, what do you mean by that?
Oh, shit.
That's terrifying. Right? And also to self-fulfilling prophecy. So if you guys watch Soul, go watch Soul. I watched Soul. My daughter's been watching Soul. I am now expert at 3 cartoons, Coco, Soul, and and Lorax. I know those cartoons backwards and forwards. And Soul was kind of tight in the end. Because Soul, even though I watched it a whole bunch of time, the woman started to focus on what she wasn't good about herself, and she got lost in this area that traps the spirit. And it just consumes the spirit, and the spirit just wanders lost for until it does, and sometimes it's never discovered, right? And that's what happens when you don't feel like you're good enough. You get trapped in that evil voice. You start looking at those voices and validating those voices. So that voice is like, yo, you know you ain't never be good. You know this, like all those limiting beliefs. Like in my ear, I may hear limiting beliefs like, shit, because I ain't tried it yet. If I try it, I bet you I get it. Or my vocals are so sexy, or whatever. The point is this: I believe in myself. But when you practice it, when you don't feel like you're good enough, that voice is like, it feels like your only thought. It's not a voice that's soft in the background. It's a loud voice that makes you feel like that's what you're thinking. And so then all of a sudden, all you now are, you're self-fulfilling that prophecy. So every time something happens, you're like, see, I told you. See, I told you. See, this, I told you. Oh, well, look, I've always been that kind of person. I'm doing the best I can. Don't try to judge me.
Who are you impersonating?
No, that's, yeah. My old nanny got fired with a silly, damaged ass. Anyway, go ahead.
Real quick.
My old nanny was the worst. She attacked me every day because she kept saying I meant something. I wouldn't even speak to her. I walk in the room. He doesn't like me, does he? I just walked in and put a fucking popsicle. How the fuck I don't like you? That's not possible. I'm not even looking at you. You're in the room. No, I'm sure he doesn't like me. He just doesn't like me. Oh, she got fired. She got fired.
All right, so check this out. Your meaning so you take your self-value plus your meaning-making machine. So if you were to walk down the street and you saw a piece of shit on the ground, and if your self-value was low, your meaning-making machine would be like, oh, think about what your meaning-making machine would say. What meaning would it make? Oh shit, this is a bad sign. See, that's why these neighbors out here, they always fucking up. These white people and these fucking dogs. And you'll come up with all of these things. Now, if your self-value was high, your meaning-making machine would kick in, but it may come up with different questions or different meanings of what that means. So, like, it's tied to it. However, the goal is to pull away from it, so you ask more questions instead of making meanings of what things are.
Simple question: is it true? Like, one of the things that can help you with your meaning making is it true? Like, to help you start fighting that voice in your head, start saying, is it true? Is it impossible? Is this really true about myself? Because sometimes, like, you know, somebody in a relationship, they go, you never do this, and they skip the 85 times you did it, just that one time you didn't do it for them. Your meaning making machine does the same thing to yourself. Mm-hmm. You may have did something 100 times right, and this one time you didn't do it right.
This is the last question, and it comes from, sorry, there was lots of comments. Okay, Jordan Johnson. And the question is, if we are supposed to be careful with our why, how do we navigate as an entrepreneur when it comes to understanding the world, our customer, and what leads them to their perspective?
Well, okay, so you should have answered that because that's what you do. I thought you just could have cut me off and saved me to answer this one. Because even when you ask customer why, the first answer they give you is never everything. You just got to know that. Like, people are not that well in tune with themselves. What you're looking for, because sometimes they may tell you, there was a famous soap commercial, a soap story about clothing soap. And they were first trying to talk, I think it's talking about how well it suds, or how well it cleans your clothes. And they found out that when they finally went to some people's house, they noticed people would smell the clothes when they finished washing it. And they realized, oh, we should say it makes your clothes smell good. And the sales took off. Because they realized that although when you ask them questions, they would say, oh, it's about cleaning my clothes. When you watched a human behave, it came down to them sniffing their clothes. So when you're listening to a customer, this is why listening has to get really deep, and you have to continue to practice it, because you have to dive so deep into listen until you find those nuggets. And those nuggets is, what is my real reason for doing this? I have learned how to articulate my reason, and then I have this real reason, right? And the real reason might not be because they're the best shoes, or they hold up best on basketball. It might be because the chicks love it in my high school.
Straight up.
And all the other shit I told you is so I can save face on why I purchased it. And when you come to me as a stranger to ask me why I like it. So And the why question, it has to be a strategic. I mean, we're not taking why off the table. We're saying in crisis, are we asking somebody when you're pointing them against a wall, why you do that? Like cornering, right? Like if you go to an office and something's not right, hey, why you put it over there? Right? We got to work on that. What made you put it over there? What was the reason for that? Right? The what works a little bit better than the why. Now, I just said I'm not the perfect one on that one. I'm working on that one. I've gotten way better because sometimes why has accusation tied to it. I'm accusing you. And so you want to turn that accusing tone and turn that I have the right to judge you tone. Like, stop acting, okay, the way you become a guru in your office, you got to be more Jesus-like. I know this is going to sound crazy because I'm not even a Christian. But when I say be more Jesus-like, you have to have a certain level of insight, wisdom, love, curiosity, forgiveness, empathy. This makes you powerful amongst people. It's not hard, driving hard, speaking, because you know what happens? This is what we forget. See, that story sounds so good on television. You know, he came in, he was a maverick, he told him what the fuck to do, they did it, he had no problems, and everybody just did it what he said, and then you hear him talk to his friends, I don't understand why he didn't do what I said, and then you're like, well, just fire him, or you know what, that's that quantitative talk, right? And what you find from a qualitative standpoint is employees are quitting because they're stressed out, right? And he's not developing talent. He or she's not developing talent. If he or she wants to develop talent, then he or she needs to go in that office and become a people person. And when they see something they don't like, become curious, stay confused, turn it into an experiment, and solve the problem. Engage in computational thinking, and then learn how to build patterns and build these replicable solutions that as you grow your employees, you can expand those replicable solutions to handle that systemic growth. But when you get to the point where you try to use these old, sitting on the stoop, just coming out of slavery, 5 hours after a sharecropping party solutions, and you wonder why you can't build this progressive business, it's because we use these old ideas that just don't fucking work. And we have to reinvent our ideas. And it's okay. When you find out your ideas don't work, it doesn't mean you're stupid. That's another thing too. This business thing, when you get in reality, you don't realize that stupid is smart thing. It started in the 20s. 1924 is when the IQ game started, and ever since then we got into this thing of, oh, he's highly educated, he's less educated. He went to Harvard, he went to just Blaney College, right? And you realize that when it comes to outcome, it has nothing to do. It has low impact on outcome, right? Once you realize that it's this very human-centric game that we're in, this whole game, when you run a business, you're not running an external structure. You're running a room full of people to move them in a certain direction to produce an outcome. So if you can't deal with the basics, which is people, and the way you deal with people is you got to deal with yourself first. It's just that simple. Now, why we're not going to be able to answer that question in totality in this 1 minute and this last question is because that's what the whole Year of Hope is dedicated to, which is helping you deal with the hurdles in self that stops you managing systems outside of self, and also help you see the connection between bad decisions are being made and common mistakes that people make. So, with that being said, go buy the E-Myth. Get ready for that podcast. When I give y'all a podcast, listen to these goddamn podcasts. Because I'm not picking podcasts because, ooh, that's cool. Ooh, that's hot. Ooh, that's fly. These are solid business podcasts. I don't think you guys know how many bad podcasts I don't give you guys. Because they suck. Like, okay, real quick side note. Vishen, he sucks. Book has some jewels, and I'm going to figure out how to replace him in a couple of years. But I don't agree with everything he says. You know why? Because deep down inside, if you're really reading Vishen, because I read people, that's what I got to do. That's what I do for a living. Vishen is echoing he don't feel like he's good enough because he uses the word success too much. Success means too much, right? He says it in a way that like he said, like I had a friend, when he told this story, this tells a lot on him. I had a friend that said he was sitting there at a cafe and he was sitting down trying to figure out how he's going to make $200 million by the next year. First of all, I would never echo that because I wouldn't give a fuck because it means nothing to me. Because once you make $200 million, for what? The for what is matter, not the $200 million. If he made $200 million because he's trying to have an impact and he's trying to make it some change or drive a role or change reality in a certain way that he thinks is going to improve society, that's cool. I mean, you know, right or wrong, I respect the game, right or wrong. but you stopped at 200 million? That means you're still dealing with that, I don't feel like I'm good enough. So, and here's the thing with Vision. He told you that, right? But the way he wrote his book, he made it feel like he got past that. What you don't realize is, and this is for lessons for everybody in his class is in that book,
He ain't got past it.
it's gonna take him a long time. Once you discover a flaw inside yourself, you gotta prepare to take that journey and then be prepared for the process. If you think because you're aware you change, then the only person you're lying to is yourself. So that's why hope is necessary, and I want to grow hope so robust that we have a place that we can work on ourselves to improve our decision making, to improve our strategy, improve our engagement in reality, and improve our impact, so then we can make our own fucking life matter and not sit around with a fucking sign that says Black Lives Matter. You know another thing that's stupid about Black Lives Matter? What have they built? How the fuck are you gonna tell somebody to build something for me and they didn't build something for themselves? That's a cold fucking game. Anyway, I'm sorry if I mess up somebody's, like you tearing down posters off your wall now, or now you tearing posters of me down off your wall because you're gonna talk about my Black Lives Matter. But once you start to open up your mind and stop being emotional, I care about black folks more than I care about anybody else. Now I care about my brown brothers and sisters. I even care about my Jewish and white folks, right? But black folks first, and then brown folks probably second, and then we work our way down wherever else needs help. Point is this. If you learn to love yourself, you can create the reality you want. You don't learn to love yourself by romanticizing people who's dead. Sometimes we love people who are dead, and we don't love anybody around us right now, and we got problems. Stop. If you can love Martin, then you can love your neighbor. I have a problem if you love Africa, but you can't love jazz. You can't love hip hop. You get what I'm going with this? Like, you worship what they're doing in Jamaica, but you won't worship what the brother's doing in his basement right now and put together some lyrics. You get on with this? Like, learn to stop putting these belief categories on love, self-value, what's valuable, humans. And don't get me wrong, I do prioritize. Now, you do have to prioritize how you move. I clean my house first before I clean anybody else's house. Now, black people's house got some work. So I'm not about to be over in the white folks' house with a broom sweeping. I gotta sweep at black folks' house. But if I see a white kid on the side of the street starving, I'm gonna pass him a sandwich. Except for the fact that I'm a human first. But I'm black that's my obligation by birth. And I love the fuck out of my black skin and my black kids and my black neighborhood and my black heart and everything black around me. But I'm not limited by my love. And I think that's where I'm trying to get you guys to see that love yourself, but don't make it a limitation. And don't get caught in the culture of self-love, which has nothing to do with self-love, to the point that it's actually blinding us from connecting to reality. Closing point. If you fall in love with make-believe too motherfucking long, it can be rewarding, especially when everybody around you celebrates that make-believe. It can feel really good. It can feel exalting. You can feel phenomenal. You can feel empowered. Like, hey, this is what we believe in. This is who we are. This is what we know. Here's the fucking catch. When it's time to do some real shit, you finally realize you ain't got nothing. Because you practiced that whole rhythm of make-believe too motherfucking long. I'm trying to get us back, pull us off the tree, get us out the branches, get us back on the ground so we can see reality. Once we see reality, now we give our brain a chance to produce solutions. Mm-hmm. But as long as we ain't make-believe, our solutions are make-believe. That being said, I just want to give a shout out to Danielle. These slides are fucking black hot. I'm telling you, when we build our first high-rise, we got to get Danielle to load that high-rise up with a number of black photos coming from everywhere. And I want to give a shout-out to all the photographers, the crew that made it happen. Give a shout-out to Marquita, who's the silence of the lamb, quiet as hell, but she's bringing fire tonight. Give a shout-out to Josh, our Jewish black killer, because he kills black Jews. That's not how I meant to say it. But so he kills it for black folks and Jews. He gets down for both races. I want to give a shout out to all those making it happen. Shout out to also Daniel for the website, the portal. Hopefully everybody at home had a good time. Shout out to Mashama, who's quietly moving shit behind the scenes, working with strategy. Shout out to all those who participated. Hey, shout out to my boy Sean, who worked with us to try to find some shit. Shout out to everybody that's helping Hope grow. I'm loving where it's going. I'm loving the effort, loving the participation. And I really want to do some shit that's going to really change our community. And I want Oakland to be the first point. I want Chicago to come with us. I want New York. I want Baltimore, New Orleans down south, Ohio, LA. Let's get this shit rocking. So with that being said, y'all have a good night.